still not sure exactly what we're getting at here. I think that's some of it. It's just like fire hose
Oh man, I don't have my preamble.
settled.
Oh, shoot.
Oh,
It's,
All right, I'll try and do it by memory. You didn't print off my preamble.
Exciting, I
It's
found out
okay.
how to get noise.
wait.
All right,
you want an earlier one?
let's call this meeting to order. It's 5:31. Like I mentioned, I don't have my preamble, so I'm going to do it from memory as best I can. Welcome to this evening's monthly Board of Architectural Review meeting. We've got a relatively short agenda, but a really good discussion. Going to be happening a little bit later. Thank you. For the agenda items, staff will introduce each item, followed by the applicant's presentation, which should not exceed 10 minutes. The chair will then ask for questions from the public, followed by questions from the BAR. After questions are closed, the chair will ask for comments from the public, and then comments from the BAR. For each application, members of the public are allowed to speak 3 minutes. And please come up to the podium over here so that people on TV and watching online can hear you. And identify yourself and provide your address. Comments should be limited to the BAR's purview, that is regarding only the exterior aspects of a project. Following the BAR's discussion and prior to taking action, the applicant will have up to 3 minutes to respond. Thank you, Breck. Alrighty. So the first item on the agenda is matters from the public not on the agenda or on the consent agenda. Currently, the consent agenda just has minutes from August and 1309 West Main, the Graduate Hotel, replacing the stucco panels with ephes. All right. Hearing nothing, we'll go to that consent agenda. Do we have anybody want to pull either thing off the consent agenda? Any comments on the minutes?
I stupidly didn't realize that they're linked and not in our packets.
Okay.
Looking at them right now.
Do we want to defer?
No,
Minutes?
I'm sure it's fine.
Sure, they're fine.
I'm good.
All right, do I hear a motion to pass the consent agenda?
So moved?
Second?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Consent agenda carries. All righty, no deferred items this evening. The first new item is 409 Park Street, certificate of appropriateness for modifying fence height. City staff would like to introduce the project, please.
Why isn't my
Just to make sure, was anyone here for the Graduate Hotel?
No, no one's online either, so.
Is the applicant here for 409 Park? Hey, welcome. Thank you for coming.
All right, so what we've got, there we go. Can you scroll down to his? Kate, how do I make it, page view? Why is it not there? Here it is. All right. So, just very quickly, this is a request. The project's at 409 Park Street. This house was constructed in 1905. It's in the North Downtown ADC District. It is contributing. The request before you is the applicant contacted me earlier this year about constructing a fence on the property. I've been working with them. There's fence at the back side, on the north side, and then here along the south side where it comes up the hill and connects with the the historic fence there at the corner. And so in the discussions that I had in reviewing it administratively, the goal was to have the new fence align at that corner or align with the historic metal fence. And the applicant had asked, and this is an early photo, but I think you all have seen the images. And so the applicant would like, this was how the fence was constructed. And when I notified them that that's not how I had understood my approval, but to allow it would have to go to you all. So that's the question before you, if the fence there is as constructed on the south side is acceptable to the BAR. And Anthony, you can.
Yeah, if the applicant wants to go ahead and, right, the applicant has 10 minutes to present. All right.
Should be a lot shorter than that. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anthony Ursali. I reside at 409 Park Street, along with my wife, and we have 3 young children, 5, 4, and 2, 3 little daughters. We recently moved into the home, and as Jeff had mentioned, and earlier this year, reached out to Jeff because the fence was really important to us because we have our daughters there. Our only green space is up there in the front, so just to be able to have them use it. And Jeff, first of all, I want to say he's been such a tremendous help throughout this. I really, really appreciate it. He helped me, walk me through this process. It is a complicated process, and we had to do the site plan approval and everything else, which is, I guess, new with the new zoning, which was great. Hopefully you all have had the narrative that I wrote. It's not very long, but just to kind of mention about that, because of its use and because of its location, we've had lots of people would walk through our property, and they just found out it's a pass-through. You come back from the alley and you want to go to Park Street, you go through. Even now, even with the fence there, we still get stragglers coming through. Sadly, one incident happened last month, another incident happened last year that were more dramatic. There were illegal activities happening on our property, specifically lewd acts happening on our property. And obviously with 3 young daughters, we don't want anything like that happening again now that we live there. We know the fence is not a perfect solution, but it's at least something. It's a barrier. So going back to what Jeff mentioned in terms of the approval, our understanding of the approval was, and this is the misunderstanding, was that the fence height at this section was going to be, as it says in there, approximately 40 inches based on this post on the other side. So that's a continuation of the fence behind you is the picture. This is the picture I recently took. The fence has been finished. And there was at some point a gate there. You can see the gate stuff there, but who knows when it was removed, but it's been removed a long while ago. So we had actually asked our fence contractor to make sure it's below that post, and that's where he did. So that post is 39 inches tall. The fence right now is 38 inches tall. The point where the fence meets up there, the smaller section, that's 33 inches tall. So what we're talking about is 5 inches. It's between 33 and 38 inches. Like I said, my understanding based on our conversations was that was the post that was the height we're talking about. But obviously there was a misunderstanding there, and I definitely don't blame Jeff on that one. So that's what our request is, to keep the fence as it is versus bringing it down 5 inches. We just feel like that's just every inch counts for us in terms of safety and having, like I said, that's our only little green grass area. It is very visible, and it's still going to be visible, but it's still that area is right there where the traffic light is, where Park Street and High Street is. I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have, but that's pretty much all I was going to say today.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that. Do we have any questions from the public? Okay. Questions from the BAR?
Thank you. I was curious if you had considered or would ever consider just putting a gate on the fence. I don't understand. Is that the property corner or is it?
It is.
Oh, it's a property corner.
It is a property corner. So the property used to be include the building in the back, which is 403 Park Street.
Okay.
In the 50s, that used, like, my understanding was that was the carriage house for our house, and in the 50s they separated. So the sidewalk is their
gotcha.
property.
I
Otherwise,
gotcha.
yeah, we would have put a
And
gate
they don't,
there.
and they don't want a gate.
I mean, I haven't had that conversation with them, but I would love to have a gate there, but I haven't had that conversation with them.
How long ago did you put this fence up?
Oh, it's only been a couple of weeks now. Yeah, so we got the approvals.
End of July. Yeah, and what Anthony's referring to is with the new zoning, he had to get a minor development plan approved.
Oh my
So it's
gosh.
another process he had to go through. That also got taken care of. As soon as that box was checked, then I signed off on the design.
Any other questions? All right, any comments from the public? All right, I guess comments from the BAR. Go ahead.
I mean, I think had this come before us in the beginning, we probably would have said the same thing that Jeff said and make it line up with that corner post, just because that looks nice, neat, and tidy. But honestly, walking out on the site and looking at it, I don't think I would ever notice unless someone called my attention to it. And because it does, it's less than 4 feet, so it technically meets our guidelines. I'm okay approving as constructed.
I've got a comment. I can also see why there was some confusion. I mean, there's the diagram, but then there's the written 40 inches, and I know it's approximately 40 inches, but that seems like an honest misinterpretation.
I also think because it was a minor review, that staff was kind enough to create the diagram. You did not, right? Jeff created that. So just to try to capture, and I know it wasn't just about this fence height, it was about everything going on. You have a lot of fence programming, as I would put it, going on all around the property. But because it was generated by staff and then he sent it to you and said, is this okay? I mean, if I were someone wanting to get to the end, this has been a protracted discussion, not necessarily for this fence, but for everything else, I would have probably just said, yeah, fine, great, thanks for doing it for me. And maybe not looked at it closely, or, and certainly with textual, with emails that went back and forth discussing other heights, and I know it gets complicated because of the change in the topo and everything else. I can see how this detail got lost. And I really do feel like our applicants, and this is, I mentioned this to Jeff, no disrespect to our staff whatsoever, especially Jeff, who we really value a lot. But I feel badly that any applicant, especially going through everything you've gone through, which is heightened paperwork, as we would say, because of this new zoning ordinance, would need to get two types of approval. You thought you got staff's approval. Of course, there was a misunderstanding, which everybody agrees it was just, mistake. It was a pure mistake, mutual mistake, as they call it in the law. Both sides, not just one side, but both sides really thought they had, what they agreed on was quite different than what the other thought. But I feel badly that you have to then come back and get our secondary approval, because Jeff's approval should have been enough, theoretically, and, in a perfect situation. And this is just an example of how it can go sideways. Not his fault, not your fault at all. But I'm, as a body that either we want to see it or Jeff needs to be able to decide it, but for us to have to, in combo, for you to have to go through this twice, I feel for you as a property owner. It just is not a very concise way, especially when we're talking about a 3.5-foot fence. So, so I'm in, and for reasons that Mr. Schwartz expressed, I'm in favor of approving it, the COA.
I do think the end result is clunky. It seems like it doesn't line up. It's hard to read the intention, and if it had come before us drawn as such, I think we would have suggested changes to it. That being said, I also think there are some pretty not very complicated ways that it could be improved, where the top rail of the first two sections could be lowered and the posts shortened without a huge amount of effort. I do think that, it is pretty visible in a row of 5 houses that all have the wrought iron fences. It does pop out to my eye in that. So all that being said, I think it's kind of an unfortunate series of events. I would encourage the applicant to resolve the fence height. I think it would look a lot better. I don't know that those several inches are going to have any effect on people passing through that site if there's not a gate at the street level. But am I willing to deny it? I don't know that it's really worth that much more discussion personally.
I kind of agree with Brack. I mean, I also agree with what y'all have pointed out too, that's kind of misconstrued. I'm sorry. I'm wondering if the applicant would be willing to just leaving the fence at the height that it is, but cut the top of the post off flush with the top of the fence, would put it about 37.5 inches. I did take a measurement earlier today. So, just I think it would make it, and I mean, I know the fence posts further back or higher up, doesn't bother me quite as much. It just sort of, because you've got the top of the fence and then jumps up to the post and then down to the historic newel or ball of the metal post. It's sort of, step up. There's just sort of like an up and down, a lot going on there.
Yeah, I have absolutely no objection to cutting that post so
And you
that's
could paint
even
the
with
top.
the
Paint the
top
top
of the,
black.
yeah, no, not at all.
I just feel like that would at least make it where there's really just kind of a single line and then a drop down to the historic fence, and then just cleans it up a little, and maybe that's a compromise we can all agree on.
Sure.
And
And we're planning on cleaning up the landscaping and doing some other stuff there. It's been a work in progress. I know it's not perfect. We really wanted to get that fence up
Sure.
quickly because of the circumstances.
Yep. We appreciate that. Any other comments?
Make a motion?
Sure.
So I'm gonna make it as a recommendation to cut the top off.
Fair enough.
All right, so having considered the standards set forth within the city code, including the ADC district design guidelines, I move to find that the height of the painted wood fence at 409 Park Street, as currently constructed on the south side, satisfies the BAR's criteria and is compatible with this property and other properties in this ADC district, that the BAR approves the request, with the recommendation that you cut the last post down to be level with the rest of the fence.
Can I just make sure I'm clear?
Oh, I see.
In
Well,
there.
you should be clear about
So-
that. That's not what I understood you to say.
The back rail comes in at that height.
So I guess
No,
to clarify, what I was intending was that he would cut it flush with the top of the
To
wood
the red
fence.
line.
Yeah.
That flush with the top of the rail?
So follow the
or
red
top of-
line.
There, the red dash line there. Is that what you understood?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I was suggesting as basically a
And if
compromise.
he wants to go shorter. but
If you wanna go
he can
shorter,
only
we would
he can
support
only
that.
go so much shorter.
Well, and also to clarify, the motion, that was a recommendation, it was not a mandate.
Right.
Second,
All right. I'll call the vote. Mr. Timmerman,
Yes, approved.
Mr. Burrow,
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
aye.
Mr. Gastinger,
Aye.
Jerry,
Aye.
and I'll vote aye. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all.
Appreciate
you.
it.
All right. Thank you all. Yeah, it's, if you all recall, the fence at, next to the Haven that you looked at earlier this year, we found out that fences aren't allowed in the downtown district. So they're working their way through a special exception to find.
Wow.
It's-
just saw that.
Yeah, I just like, okay.
Turn this phone on vibrate.
All right, hang one second, let me,
All right. No, it's just my kids going in and out the front door. Yeah.
so,
All right. That was our
yeah.
last official agenda item.
Right, now we're moving forward here. So
So-
I've got, just trying to get this lined up with, I'm on Zoom. There I am. My wife told me this morning, she can tell when I'm happy because I will do this, you know, and so she said, have you ever done that during the BAR meeting? And I said, I don't know, but I will tonight. So, sort of like in that Bohemian Rhapsody when he blows his mom a kiss, that was a kiss to my wife. So, and she's probably not even watching. All right. All right, here, I found it. Okay. So, just so everyone out there knows, we received this email Monday. The AIA Central Virginia, you all were selected, I think it says it in here somewhere, for the Community Service Award and for integrity and honesty. So, the county ARB was also, so I don't know if you have to share it or take them to dinner, or they take you to dinner, but there is an event on the 23rd at an awards gala.
We don't know where, we don't know when.
Yeah, October 23rd, somewhere. So,
My guess is that would be at VMDO, my guess. Or never mind, I take that back, they did two different places. The event space that Woodard used to own. Okay.
Old Metropolitan Hall.
Yes,
Yeah, right.
or maybe he still doesn't, I don't know.
so I'm not available, but I'll share information as I get it. But congratulations, and it's nice to get a positive acknowledgement for you all. So there's that bit of news out of the way.
Can we get a trophy? We can.
I think we should get a trophy.
I tell you what,
Can put it-
I got enough trophies at home. I'll build you one. It's we'll never miss
You can
it.
have a tiara.
All right, so I'm trying to get to the Cafe Space work session. And if you will indulge me for a second, I prepared, I did, I had them right here in front of me, spreadsheets. Had a whole bunch of them. Kate, what did it do now? Here they are. So, here they are. Yeah, help me out. So these are, this is, there's a few changes, but this is what I sent out on Monday. And-
That is very helpful.
That's right, yeah, this is, so, hopefully it'll be readable. This is,
That's,
I just, and Kate and I, we had a lot of discussion about this last week, and it's really, how do we package this? How do we bundle it together? Oh, wait, there's one other thing I have to ask you first. Forgive me. It's been that kind of day. I was asked, and I offered to get the BAR's opinion on this. Get it there in a minute, just come on. All right. Share screen, share this. So I was asked, and I shouldn't make it specific. This is a generic question, but it is associated with a specific place on West Main. I was asked if I would approve these are, maybe a better way to show you is, there's companies that make these vinyl entrances, these temporary vestibules that they are popular in some of the towns and cities up north. I haven't seen anything here, but the request was to add one at the this restaurant on West Main. My recommendation was that they could, for a lot less money, probably just construct a small vestibule inside with a second door. They don't want to do that, and the other way these could be treated would be like tents, in which it is temporary, but we don't allow tents in front of contributing structures. So I'm not opposed to them as a seasonal thing, if circumstances warranted them. But my concern, and it's not one thing I raised was because of there's a slope up to the door, it would have to open out into the sidewalk. I caution the owner that just opening doors out into the public right of way could become problematic. But so just curious if any immediate thoughts, concerns, we can revisit it, but I did say I would float it.
I would just say right off the bat, just given the uniqueness of that facade and I think the special nature of that particular building on the street, and I wouldn't agree with it.
I share your concern about opening the door onto the sidewalk. I also think you immediately have an ADA issue. It has nothing to do with us, but
Right.
But the exterior door would swing out, you've got two doors, but it would swing into the vestibule, it just.
Couldn't because of the it's a slope up to the door.
and I guess they couldn't swing it to the side.
You're swinging in front of a neighbor's door.
Yeah,
I think there's a door about a foot to the left that goes upstairs to the apartments.
yeah. But I mean,
And is the purpose of this for weather?
So that the concern is when they open the door and it's cold, that people complain, and that's when I said, well, you could very simply construct, a 3x3 vestibule to the inside.
Right.
But they said, oh, that would make them lose multiple tables.
Right.
That's not for us to debate.
Right.
I think it's debatable. But,
Inside's
Yeah.
not the purview of the BAR.
yeah. So I say, again, I think it's we allow tents on a temporary basis. We don't allow them in front of contributing structures. This would be one.
So
It's
this is a
difficult.
contributing structure.
Yeah. I mean, to me, part of the recessed entrance of this facade almost lends itself to doing something like this, but it doesn't mean I like it. And some of the images you showed of other around the country or whatever, where it was really like a wart on the outside of the building is even worse.
Yeah, I even suggested whatever would cost to purchase this, put it inside. But
Are there any existing in the city?
not that I'm aware of, no.
I mean, I think your comparison to tents makes a lot of sense. It just,
If it were temporary, I guess.
yeah, I mean, and that would be, this would have to be written in that it's only for the cold season. But, I'm just thinking
Then-
code-wise, I think they're gonna run into some problems.
Then are they gonna turn around and argue that, oh, well, it helps with, keep the air conditioning in the summertime? Right?
Maybe. but-
That's a narrow
but we'll
sidewalk
have to
there. It opens right
tell
into
them
it,
that
like 4-foot sidewalk.
And if you,
We'd have to write our conditions that, it would only be for the cold months. But again, I don't think they can do that legally. I think they're gonna have a code issue right away.
Is the sidewalk all public?
Yeah. Yeah, the
I mean, there
right-of-way
might
goes
be
right to the face of the building.
a sliver that's a property line, but for all intent and purpose, the sidewalk is the public right of way.
And
Now,
it's very
one-
narrow.
Yeah, now, one thing, if they were to be considered, I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't propose that, but,
You know, for what it's worth, I don't, that is, I mean, given that it doesn't protrude past the building, and like in this condition, it doesn't bother me maybe as much as other people.
You're supposed to have like.
But I have real questions about whether it actually works, and I have concerns about the door swinging into the public right away.
Yeah, then it's gonna be.
I don't know, I think if we were going to approve this, it would need to come to us with a formal
oh,
COA.
absolutely,
So-
absolutely. I just,
It
in some
doesn't
ways, just trying to,
sound like
you know,
we're enthusiastic
I mean-
about it.
I can't,
I mean, I would say over the years, there have been a lot of not permanent changes, but there have been some modifications to this, and to this building, you know, can go back but it's looking pretty good right now. I mean, I just feel like those storefronts are really a character defining part of at least the first story of this building, you know, along with the block glass. I would rather see something of a permanent nature there, to be honest. And I would be more favorable to that than something temporary that, you know, they come and they promise it'll be gone in the spring and then it stays there year round, and, you know, because they wouldn't want to lose the seats again, right? Even in the warm weather, or the argument that the AC or whatever it is, but it requires another thing that the city has to police that we don't really have a category for.
yeah, and then it goes in the storeroom, comes out, goes in the storeroom, comes out. It's like that Christmas tree that
And-
doesn't look like a tree. I can ask, I mean,
And
about,
yeah, and we have no precedent for it.
We don't.
I like the tent analogy, but it's not a tent. You know, and they are kind of a portable, it's like putting a pod there or something. And it's this system that's kind of being, you know, pasted onto the front of a pretty good-looking building. So, I don't know.
Actually, to add on, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, because of their temporary nature, I mean, the ones that I've seen in big cities look really cheap.
yeah,
And
Yeah.
I'm afraid that would set a precedent that, in this case especially, really detracts from the elevation.
I can think of so many other restaurants that have this issue that would
Yeah.
want to, I mean, not that that's a bad thing, we want to be able to benefit property owners and business owners, but to have it something temporary like this, you know, pod thing, be attached to all of our exterior of the restaurants, all of a sudden, it's just like,
well, I never want to tell someone, you know, the BR said no, but it's always helpful to be able to say, you know, you got to write me a check if you want to go formally, and then I will share with the applicant. I think, you know, my questions would be, you know, what time of year, season, can those be absolutely clear? Maybe the thing can be, doesn't need to be entirely to the window. I don't know. And I was told by our code official that, you know, there's no problem with a door opening out into a street. In fact,
That needs to be fixed.
yeah, there's some, you know, well, it's not our
Well, I
code. It's
mean-
like, you know,
Oh,
just
the
as,
building code.
yeah. So I was a little
Yeah, but
surprised.
for egress, it has to swing out.
Well,
I thought it would talk about the zoning code, because that's actually our zoning code might prevent this, just because you're supposed to have an entry feature, and that gets rid of your recessed entry feature.
so
So that might be an easy answer to them, is it doesn't meet the zoning code.
So some questions I'll have, but I would not, I would let them know this was not an enthusiastic
I think
response.
that'd be a fair statement.
All right, very helpful, thanks.
I had a random question that was not on your agenda, Jeff, whenever it's appropriate.
Go ahead.
I know you got, so, 707 East Jefferson Street, did that come before us? So I've been watching this,
It's not in a district.
it's not?
I must get a question about that once a month or once a week. It's not in a district, believe it or not. There's that corner, like a little slab. In fact, Robert, before he left, that was one of his goals, to get that into a historic district, that gap tooth spot between High Street and Ninth. and-
1920, and it's not,
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to comment, I just didn't remember it coming before us. I'm surprised it's not individually designated, but we haven't done that in a long time either. But whoever has done this, and I kind of know who the owner is, but they removed all of the brick on this building, and they have put the brick back on, and and it actually is an excellent restoration. I'm really impressed. They've modified the top window a little bit on the third floor. They're doing some other, I mean, they must have had to get a building permit for that side porch, right? I'm sure they did anyway.
Yeah.
They've added on a significant amount. But I mean, I thought it would be quite altered, and the brickwork is actually really beautiful. So if anybody goes by 707 East Jefferson between 7th and 8th Street, on the other side of the, I don't know, S&L building or Standard & Poor's or whatever it's called these days, the side part of that.
Yeah, the contractor reached out to me, in fact, and so we had talked.
It's Lee Construction. They've just done a really, really nice job. Anyway, so.
So, yeah, it's all right.
Thank you.
It's one
I
of
didn't
those-
know if I'd missed it or something, but.
It's all right, it's all right.
Okay, thank you.
It's, one of the things we're fixing also in our system is, everything's supposed to come to me that has a building permit to review for a COA. Unfortunately, the system sends me everything, every building permit. So it's like, and there's parts, sometimes I have to go in and literally say, I have nothing to, because they say, well, just click waive. I said, I'm not waiving something without explaining why I'm waiving it. So, yeah, but it's the volume of stuff that is where things are slipping through. But Chuck Miller, the code official, is really good at asking me about things. So that's been working. All right, so very quickly here, and this better. All right. Kate, what did I do? Sorry, it's become almost a standing joke. So, Kate. Okay, share screen. I want this.
So Jeff, while you're working on that, I wanted to talk about something really quickly that's pertinent to this. So I talked to one of our city councilors. He was asking about, like, how are we doing making progress on updating the guidelines? And I sort of said, well, we're a volunteer group. It's a lot of work. This is really something that would be great to have a consultant's assistance with. And he said, oh, okay. Well, then maybe there's some money for that. So just wanted to bring it up with this group and see if that is something we would be interested in. I think we'd obviously want to be working closely with them and whatnot, but we've done some work at this effort. We've put some good hours in, but it is, like I said, for a volunteer group, it's a kind of Herculean task to do a complete, not necessarily rewrite, because I don't think we need to do a complete rewrite, but just review and refresher, if you will, of the guidelines. I also think there's a place where a consultant could really help us look at where the new zoning ordinance and the guidelines are butting heads, if you will, and then bring those particular instances to us to like focus in on and get our feedback on and sort of weigh in. So does that sound like it interests folks?
I'm in complete agreement, not for the obvious reasons that, none of us are lazy. It's just a Herculean, as you said, task.
Carl's got a thought.
I've
Been saying this for a
been
while.
on the board for 8 years plus 2, and if this doesn't get done before I'm done with the planning commission, I'm gonna cry.
Okay. So
Probably move.
yeah, Jeff, I guess his advice was to, maybe we can say formally as a BAR, yes, we think we need a consultant's assistance with our guideline revision, and that to kind of help send that message up. I guess we got a new director of NDS appointed last
started
night
last week.
or something.
As she's getting, James is still in the, up the hall, and he and I talk
Yep.
regularly, so we're well aware of this. Some of it was waiting for the ordinance to get approved.
Sure.
As we've talked several times. My goal was to have the BAR, at least locally, and I've been talking to Jenny Keller about, these ideas of that identifying and sort of determining the characteristics of the historic districts. It should be us in this community, not, someone, the low bid contractor. I think we're better equipped to do that. I told James Freeze earlier this year, I said if I had 2 weeks and didn't have to do all my other stuff and knew at the end of those 2 weeks I didn't have to respond to all the emails that had piled up, I could go through and I know most of what these changes are. So you're right, it's time and resources.
That's the tough part.
So we have funds to access, but I also have the historic conservation districts, and I have the entrance corridor districts. And yeah, it's been tough. Kate fortunately is here, but I've been
Yeah, this wasn't meant to be a
batting by
reflection on
myself for the
y'all,
last 6 months.
By any means.
Yeah,
think
I
it's-
know.
We all recognize it's a lot of work.
I think
And
it's-
obviously, we want the public involved with this too.
Yeah, and so tonight is a first step in that
Yes.
direction. And actually, when you all earlier tonight asked me about when council discussed the tree management plan the other night, I thought they were getting ready to ask me a question because we've been talking about heights. Because I keep asking, why are we, you're going to spend how much money on trees, and then you're going to approve possibly 10-story buildings on the south end of the mall. We should make sure, one or the other's got to, prevail here. And talking with Paul Josie earlier this summer about 2 ideas. One would be as something comes in, and not just on this section of Maine, West Maine, and other parts of town where we have tall trees, what would be helpful criteria to require of an applicant relative to shading. Also, the idea of doing some modeling around town just to sort of anticipate some of the problems. So there's I'm thinking a little bit of both makes sense, but to be able to say to applicants, when you come in, this is what information we'll want to see from you, but also I do think a conversation needs to be had with council in relative to, this is what you've approved for a zoning ordinance, and this is what it will do. We can change the guidelines to accommodate that, or, so I'll let you know how that goes. Like I said, I have some funds, but tonight's project, and the first thing that I want to tackle in the guidelines and is the downtown mall cafe spaces. And I'm doing some boilerplate stuff here just to make sure we cover all the bases. Map of the downtown mall, these are the blue are the cafe spaces. The line that you see weaving through there is the fire lane. That's the clear lane that's required. So if you have any questions about the map, we can go back to that. This is my plan, the plan. So March 1st is when the leases for the mall, each cafe space has a 1-year lease, automatic March 1st through. Any changes that we would want to have in place need to be well ahead of that. So I set end of January as like the latest that we could get council's approval on anything. I'd really like to take this to council as soon as possible, the earliest being sometime in November or early December, which would mean leaving tonight, I would have a good summary to work from in any changes and revisions that we would want to make to the guidelines. And so just cover the bases again. Cafe spaces, the leased out, it is within the code section, and part of that code provision is that they are subject to BAR review. The city can also change things that go on, so that's, this, see, they're the 30 days in advance of, so that's why this doesn't necessarily apply to the guidelines, so to speak, but I'm using it to say I don't want to come up with guidelines that we say the week before March 1st. Again, the code that references the one-year period. One of the things that we'll talk about later is there's been a proliferation on the mall of planters, and some more egregious than others, planters on the outside of the railings. And we all know why folks are doing this, but the fact remains is they do not lease that space. That is in fact a zoning violation. That's not for you all to worry about. It's wherever the planters that are inside that designated space and the barrier around it, that is under your purview. Also, I'm not going to get into, you all don't determine the location, the size, placement of these. However, if we have time, I think some recommendations on that policy would be appropriate for you all to offer counsel. For example, and you saw some of the suggested guidelines I have, simply privileging the fountain spaces. Something to communicate to council that they, maybe rethink it. So per the city ordinance, a cafe space it follows what the ABC regs say. You must have an enforceable space. And it could be nothing more than 2 posts and a rope, but you can know that that's the area in which you're serving alcohol. So per our code, that can be marked by trees, fences, planters, barriers. It doesn't have to be the metal railing. Your job in this is, per code, you make recommendations in the design guidelines, and they are approved by city. Are saying it, but the guidelines are council's, and you're charged with implementing them. So when people say the BAR won't let me, I push back on that. To establish the guidelines, and one of the key reasons is to ensure that within historic districts, new structures, additions, landscaping, et cetera, will be in harmony with their setting and environments. So on a downtown mall, we're dealing with a space that is on the National Register. It is within an ADC district. So you're looking through that lens of what's appropriate for the mall. Go to the design guidelines. This is it as far as guiding principles, if you will. And when you take out the redundant words there, it's pretty short. Everything needs to look the same, have the same color, be the same material, either black or silver toned, and no untreated wood. When someone comes in and asks me, can I do XYZ in a cafe space? There's a lot in here that doesn't answer those questions. So as far as what you all, my advice to you in reviewing the guidelines relative to this is historic space, we can look back to, this is, for example, from Halpern's and Associates, their summary when the design intent for the mall. And you can read it, but it's, basically that, the mall is a linking of spaces and, a sequence of interconnected rooms. And there's a lot in the rest of the document about the pedestrian experience. The pedestrian is, what they're seeing and doing is important. Halpern even went so far, or Halpern Associate, I don't know whose notes these are, but these are from the architect. There's some clear notes on where there was some space shown to be used, and you can read the comments. Less clutter, more see-through would help maintain visual continuity. So as far as the design intent, again, it's that sense of, not that you can see from one end to the mall to the other, but it shouldn't be obstructed. It's how I'm reading it. As you know, the mall was recently listed on the National Register. These are the statements that were in that nomination and accepted by the National Park Service. Some of them are a little scathing, where they say the tables, chairs, post chain, pipe rail enclosures for dining areas, they affect the open character of the original design. They talk about that the spatial organization and LHA design were devised to influence movement along the mall remains, although the current use of public space for private dining area hinders its original effect. So again, from the National Register listing, from the original design documents, the lens through which to view the mall as a historic place. One of the things I think is most important as we go into this discussion is we're talking about visibility, and I just wanted to illustrate to myself and to others. And someone raised the comment to me in the office, said, well, yeah, my kid was running around, I lost them, they ran around the other side of a cafe space, or I turned the corner and I bumped into somebody. So this sense of enclosure, and whereas that's why my thought is that maybe there's a height issue if we can move the planters to the inside, but, the guidelines as currently written would allow, if someone came in and planted a 6-foot hedge, or installed a railing that, was 5 feet tall with planks on it, as long as they're, painted black and metal or whatever, I have no basis to deny that. And I think it would be helpful to make that clear. And I think that you can create an intimate space within the cafes without creating an artificial hedge around it, and which is what I see happening. So quickly, the railings. These are the guidelines for the railings. Should be iron, black, well-maintained, and talks about the bollard thickness. We have all kinds of designs of the railings. One of the questions that has been raised, and Paul Josie, in fact, raised this, we have some panels that are solid. We have some that are open. That might be something the BAR wishes to make a recommendation on. The railings are all various heights, from 26 inches up to 36 inches. My suggestion is that it be no higher than counter height. Now, we would go out and anything that's out there now, we'd measure and write it down, and that would stay. But anything that came in new, we would at least have a basis for saying this is what it should be. The guidelines require the bollards, because this used to be when they had just the bollards in the chain, they need to be 3 inches in diameter. You can see there's some that don't even have bollards, so that should be revised or taken away. Or
There's some square ones too, so.
Yeah, it's all
similar
kinds.
diameter.
Right, so it's, now, and one of the things that we don't address, and this is where zoning has asked me, are these allowed? And now on the left, you see a chain. I would say it's allowed if it's black. Then you see zip ties holding things together. We see cable clamps, but on the far right, those are cable clamps, but they're painted black. That, to me, probably achieves what they're looking for, although we should require that they be cut off and not be dangling out. So that's one of the things we'll talk about. Again, here we've got, somebody just used a bunch of electrical tape. So it may seem like a nothing, but if I cannot right now go out on the mall and say, yeah, you covered your thing in zip ties and duct tape, it shouldn't be that way. It'd be helpful to know that. There are some things we need to talk about and communicate to council. We have spaces that I don't know if anybody's used in years. I need to understand better what's going on with that. There are places where we have 2 feet between joining cafe spaces. It would seem a common railing would be ideal and solve a problem there. The tables and chairs. The guidelines say they should be metal, black, or silver tone, and we address tablecloths and cushions. We have approved some steel-framed composite furniture on the mall, which I didn't know until I talked to Craig yesterday, so that precedent's been established. But we have all kinds of colors. Now, and I'm not showing to say, look how bad this is. I'm saying if the BAR is okay with different colors, then let's adjust the guidelines accordingly. Otherwise, we would have to go out and say to every one of them that they're in violation. The other thing is we save the same design. Now on the left, until the other day, I didn't know if we would allow that. We do. But on the right, that's Bijou. Apparently, they've been there for a long time. But that obviously doesn't follow the guidelines. I'm not saying it shouldn't, but again, if we went out and said, you need to be, are you violating the guidelines or not? So we can adjust accordingly if you all think so. Like I said, those have been approved. The guidelines say same material, same design. You can see these are each a separate cafe space, but 3 different chairs in the left, 2 in the middle, and 2 on the right. And there's another place, there's 4 different kinds of chairs. I think it's difficult to say to somebody, your furniture should all match, because it's not, you go to buy another metal chair, you're maybe not going to find the same thing. But I think it would be helpful if we could define similarity. That, for example, you can see on the far left, the chair in the back has a spoke back, and the chair in the front has railing back. But they're both curved, both somewhat similar. Maybe that's similar enough. We say that the tables need to be the same design materials. The photograph on the right is one place. There's all kinds of stuff going on there. Is that okay or not? On the left, it's not matching.
Why are we saying that they should be,
Because our guidelines say it.
okay?
And if you don't want that, then I need to change the guidelines. Otherwise, I have to say, and I can't just do that. So again, there's some chairs there. They're not the same. I'm not saying one's good or bad, but
Just pointing out, the reality is inconsistent with what our current guidelines
Right.
are. That's why we're here.
right. And what's happened since COVID, a lot happened, and I had zoning coming saying, what about this, what about this, what about this, to the point where we could walk up and down the mall and cite just about every cafe space. The prudent route is to find out, like, I don't want to go cite somebody and then you all say, I don't know, Jeff, those chairs look fine. So let's determine what is acceptable, what's not. Then on March 1st, when everybody starts over again, then the rules are in place. And I'll get and explain that in a minute.
Jeff, how do you want to handle this? Are you
I'm going to go through this just,
presenting these?
yeah, I just want to,
Through all of them?
As
I'm going to
annual comment?
quickly as I can,
Okay.
yes, because I just want to make sure you guys know what we're dealing with. Cabinets and counters, they're not addressed in the guidelines. We've got different kinds out there. We've got things that are, we don't really address these. I mean, we've got, so if that's acceptable or not, we can talk about it. Serving counters and cabinets are the height. I think my suggestion is we allow them. Maybe the height is something that we could address. It's been raised that having something that's not movable, or the one on the right seemingly anchored to the mall, or would
It's
not
been
be
there
easily
forever.
be, I know, it's probably rooted itself. So, countertops, nothing in the guidelines about countertops. We have stone, we have some aluminum for mica, I think, in the middle. There's glass on the right. Then planters, this is the big one. We talk about they need to be compatible in terms of sky scale, color, and they should either be terracotta or concrete. We've got all kinds of stuff out there. We've got planters hanging on railings. We've got trellises. We've got busted planters with grass growing in it. This is some of what I was saying, things on the outside. Granted, we could tell them it has to be inside, but we still should have a discussion about is an assortment okay or not. Then we've got trellises. This is where I get into the height issue. Someone could theoretically build a planter, surround the whole thing, and have a trellis and have a hedge around the cafe spaces. We're seeing planters on the outside of railings and suspended on railings. The one in the middle is actually built into it, not a problem. We don't allow wood on the mall, but we've had a proliferation of barrels. And the cattle troughs, they're silver toned, but should they be allowed? Plants, we don't say anything about types of plants. We don't necessarily have to. I would suggest we at least say that they be alive, and that they be a certain height. Umbrellas, we're supposed to only allow one color. We've got lots of different colors. I don't really have a problem with that personally, but need to discuss it.
I don't know if there's one color across the board.
I know. Well, per space, like whatever, we're seeing new types of umbrellas that, and I don't know what else might come along. So we should have, be aware of what types we're seeing. We're having issues with the weights.
Guidelines say they should be one color.
Yes,
Within
the space, yeah.
It says if used may contain a maximum one dark or neutral solid color that is compatible with, okay, so.
Yeah,
one
yeah,
dark or
it's
neutral.
poorly written, but
Right,
yes.
but
I'm not
also-
saying like the
I'm
entire
sorry.
mall has to be.
Yeah, no, I understood, yeah, thank you.
So,
I know I'm blind, but.
that's all right. So that, now we've got umbrellas anchored onto the railing, not allowed because the umbrella can't go over top. But thing with these new cantilevered umbrellas, you get those big weights underneath. I've been asked about shade cloths, so we can have that discussion. Trash containers are in the guidelines. There's not a problem. Lighting, the guidelines are silent on lighting. We have a policy about catenary lights that I had circulated, and we'll recommend that we adopt that, and that should take care of a lot of that. But we've got decorative lighting on railing, underneath countertops. We've got, well, on the left is not allowed anymore, but so if you all, how do you all feel about lights on the railings? There's nothing in the guidelines about decorations, but we're seeing artificial plants, flags, pennants, and then, of course, going back to wood again, got a lot of wood on the mall. We can change the guidelines, we can say no, we can say finish it, but we're getting it in places. We have the faux wood on that, the composite tables, we have stained wood, we have the barrels, there's wood on those sandwich board signs. So some help. Heaters, this is a big one. We don't say anything about heaters, but just to be clear, space heaters are allowed by the code. They must be approved by staff. And in conversation with zoning today, they would welcome a strong recommendation from the BAR. Per our fire department, they can't be within 5 feet of combustible things, which include umbrellas and trees and things. The problem is with storage of them, you can't take the gas inside. So that's where you'll hear the vendors say, well, I have to leave it outside because I can't move the propane tank. City manager decided last year that no space heaters within 10 feet of the trees, so that you all know that that has been addressed. So we should talk about what is acceptable. The encouragement I got was that the BAR should say these aren't appropriate on the mall. One of the things is the storage of them. One big issue we know about is the trees. We are also facing, there are different kinds of heating, propane products out there, suspended. There are these tiki torch things. There's, very simple things and very elaborate things. I don't know if someone said to me, I want to have my propane fire table, what would I say? So not trying to be alarmist, but it would be helpful to know where we are. There are some miscellaneous items that we'll talk about. These aren't important at this point. Color, we really hung up on the guidelines say black or silver tone. Here you see I've got a green service cabinet and a purple sign, and then there's a brown trellis behind it. Are we wed to only one color? I was asked about, well, what if someone wants to put up a sculpture or something? Now, the frog, my understanding, had been inside a cafe space, but it's migrated out. The one on the right is not in a cafe space, but I felt it symbolized what something might ask me for. We've been asked about, there's a lot of things that need to be screened and taken care of on the mall. This is probably something that we can address with something simple in the guidelines, but we have compost bins, we have some people doing gardening, the recycle bins. Signs are they're not part of the cafe space. If they are on railings, they're regulated by the sign regs. But I wanted to ask you all, aside from the unpainted wood, these are per the guidelines, but we're seeing these. Does the BAR think that we should allow the plastic commercial type sandwich boards? I said then miscellaneous signage will take care of that. My goal is to have some guidelines ready, take it to council or take it to you guys in October. And another thing I want to work on is for each cafe space, we'll have some sort of application form where they show me, what they're doing, what's where. And that way, if the middle of the year, a Mickey Mouse sculpture shows up, I can say, well, no, it wasn't on I didn't approve that. But it at least gives us something to work from at the beginning. Everybody's working from the same rule book. So that's one of my goals. And then we've got some policy discussions we can get into, but we're not going to get into that tonight. So Kate and I thought it was important that I go through those images. I know it's a lot, but now I would like to open it up with the spreadsheet that I put out. It 2 sides. I tried to put yellow where I suggested something. The last 2 columns are really sort of the questions that have come up, the certain situations that have come up. But I thought it would be helpful to start with at least establishing some guidelines, and that's where I drafted at the top. And it kind of would say, to cover the things that we don't know what to, I don't have something specific, but for example, and I think one of the first ones is that we prioritize the pedestrian experience. And so that would tell me if someone said, I want to put up a 5-foot railing, I would say, well, that's not prioritizing the pedestrian experience. I then have the grounds to say that view should not be obscured. So with that, I hand it off to you guys to work through this. I'd like to, by the end of the night, have some notes all over this and take it from there. And just to be clear to everybody out there, this is not, we're taking no action tonight. I'm not asking you to vote on anything. We would do something formally, hopefully in October, November at the latest. When that occurred, I would also contact every restaurant and let them know that this was being discussed. And then certainly it goes to council, where there would also be a public process involved in that. So any questions for me? I'm clicking my fingers.
I've got a quick one. Is any other agency involved in any of these approvals? The zoning?
Well, when the BAR, so for cafe spaces, I'm allowed an administrative review on your behalf. So that approval, that COA, is enforceable by zoning. So the zoning official and I work hand in hand. If somebody's doing something that's not what we've approved under the design guidelines, that's a zoning violation. Now, planters outside of the cafe space, that's not our purview, but zoning would have that. The fire department has requirements about, well, obviously things catching on fire, things like that. But this is in terms of the aesthetics of the cafe spaces. And that is singularly yours to come up with the guidelines. Well, I'm sorry, council to approve.
I might offer a couple things here, just partly to make a bridge between the work that was done with the Downtown Mall Committee over the past year, which I sat on your behalf. And this did come up in the course of the multiple meetings that were happening over on a monthly basis. And that group included city officials. It included business owners, people who work day in, day out on the mall itself. In addition to a broad range of people. And I'll go back and bring the notes from that meeting that focused on cafe spaces. But my general recollection and sense was that there was probably a similar reaction to all of the things that you are thinking now too that we've gotten to a place where there's considerable clutter and not great direction, and that the mall has continued to be in small bits further privatized by the spaces, by the cafe spaces. I think everybody recognized the incredible balance. We need a vibrant business community, and lively cafe spaces bring a lot of energy to the mall. That's absolutely imperative. On the other hand, there are a lot of these little decisions end up creating quite a mess. And there was a general support, I think I could say, for the BAR to provide some better clarity and improve the visual clutter that is really the dominant kind of like condition at the moment. I'll just add one thing to from my own personal point of view, but also from my reading of how the mall has developed. It's essential that we recognize that this is public space. Like, the mall belongs not to any of these vendors, but to the citizens of Charlottesville. We've made it possible to loan some of that space in order to enjoy the benefits of eating and dining and meeting and commuting together. But I think that for me, a lot of the basis behind simplifying a design palette, opening up visual lines, creating a non-branded, if you will, sense of community is because of that public character. If this would be a different conversation, I think, if we were talking about private space, even in a historic district.
Another general comment, not as profound as Breck's, but I know that we don't have we're not revising the city code here. But I would note, and Jeff noted when he did his overview, that there are those, for lack of a better word, grandfathered outdoor spaces that exceed 800 square feet. 800 square feet is a lot. I mean, and I'm not saying that the ones that are grandfathered should be done away with, or I don't know what the optimum or fair amount of space on the mall would be for these restaurants, but some of them are quite large, and some that are grandfathered in that are noted, I'm not even sure they are currently 800. That may be possible to be, I don't want to get into the weeds on that, but I would I would, as part of our recommendation to council, be to reassess, number one, the grandfathered ones, and see if they really should be entitled to whatever that excess amount is. I mean, I know, I won't mention it, but one of them is quite large, but it's probably the oldest grandfathered, as we were talking in our pre-meeting, cafe space on the mall. It's been there forever.
Can I address that just real quick? The Wolf Josie plan addresses this very issue in specific fashion and recommends a new layout of rental spaces. And although that's not like kind of the direct intention of the meeting this evening, I'd encourage us to all take a look at that and see if we could support that. Okay. I think that would be, perhaps useful to have in the hopper as new leases are given.
And maybe that would be an easy way, something that council wouldn't have to refashion or revisit stuff, but we just had heard in the pre-meeting that council took no action on that report, which is unfortunate, so maybe we can move that forward. So maybe all of us want to read that for next time, because I know I didn't focus on that when Paul did his presentation.
Was that part of the tree preservation plan, or was that a different downtown mall?
There's, I will say, within City Hall, there's an understanding and acceptance that some reevaluation of the size and location of the spaces is necessary. This is not elimination. But it's there's a recognition, for example, where there's fountains that we've encroached on them and created a problem. Maybe some adjustments can be made. So that's where in the suggested principles. For example, one of them was the fountain should be accessible with clear space on all sides, not located within cafe spaces or encroached by cafe railings. It's a broad, that's less of a design review, but I think it would be helpful to have it in the guidelines, because then that, be something that's communicated to council. But it would be also with, as I mentioned, I suspect when we say to the cafes, you guys have, big potted plants outside of your space, you can't do that. They're gonna say to council, well, if we move them inside, then we lose tables and chairs. So I think that would be why it's saying you all would be appropriate to offer some comment on that if you had a feeling or a sense of where it should go. But I think that if it, leave aside the spaces and locations of the railings and focus on what the guidelines would say. And then I guess I would offer, if we feel at the end of this discussion, if we need a second work session in the interim, I can try to arrange something, but really hope to get as far as we can tonight.
I also wanted to just express that I'd like for our draft to be circulated to, for lack of a better word, stakeholders downtown. And I
Absolutely.
know that's,
Yeah.
it's hard to, maybe you have a listserv of all the businesses with cafe spaces, but Friends of Charlottesville Downtown, there's no DBAC anymore. There's no Business Owners Association that I know of other than Friends of Charlottesville Downtown, but certainly there would be a great group to circulate it and that could get it to other people. But, I agree at this stage, we want to do our draft and then present it for input.
Yeah, I think that's the plan that Jeff started out with, was we comment tonight, and then
Yeah.
probably at the October meeting, we'd have potentially a line out the door of people who want to comment on this thing.
I think it's also important to note that what I liked about your plan was providing enough buffer between when a decision is made and, giving 60 days, 90 days to store owners, restaurateurs, giving them time to react. So it's not like we're throwing this all of a sudden in their lap.
Well, nothing, absolutely nothing should, nobody should think that we're gonna go out there and say, you guys gotta go buy new railings and new furniture, new everything. There's certainly some things that will be exactly the same as they are. But as I get questions about artificial flowers wrapped on railings, the guidelines don't say anything. You all may think they're fine.
Right.
Let me know, and that's where I'd like to get to. So it's not taking something away from people and these are hopefully cosmetic changes.
I mean, Jeff, I think you've done a really nice job putting this together for
Yeah,
us.
thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's start going through it.
Okay.
So-
Go item by item.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so the first little section here, and I don't know, I know there's some members of the public, this is just like a general discussion. Do you want to share this with them,
Who?
these
Oh.
ladies?
I'm sorry.
Do they want a
Okay,
copy so they
Two
can
people
follow
here
along?
that are members of the
Copies.
public.
We have a draft.
I
think you probably filled it out.
So at least so you
It's been
can follow
updated a couple
along.
times.
Maybe, I don't know if this is necessarily the night for public comment, but at least this way y'all can follow along a little bit better. And then for next,
It really came just to be aware of the process because,
we appreciate it.
yeah, we're from Preservation Piedmont.
Yes, ma'am.
In trying to follow the process, it's been hard to know what you were doing when.
Mhm.
So we just wanted to come and engage with you and be collaborative. Like Greg, I was on the downtown committee and there was substantial interest in all of this. So I would encourage you all to, you have 3 documents at your disposal. One being the National Register nomination, the Wolf Josie study, which is excellent. And there's a really, if you kind of read between the lines, it is about more than just trees. And the third being that, the downtown report. And I think if you're looking for people to bounce things off kind of informally or have a working group, several members of the downtown group said we wouldn't mind meeting, again, informally, that we're all committed to downtown.
Awesome.
So, good luck to you on this, and we'd love to stay involved in the process.
Thank you for coming out.
Jeff, as you said, the cafe owners should not expect that we're going to make them buy new chairs or.
Yeah, so, and I'm not,
Yeah.
I mean, they're
I think
leasing the
that's to be
space, so yeah,
I think
the
that's to be
restaurant
determined.
owners.
That's part of what's on the table.
A handful of them
is
might have to buy
enforcement.
new
Yeah,
chairs.
there might be, but there's, yeah, I think
Can be a little bit of Band-Aid.
where there's the faux wood, it may not pass muster. Certainly where there's busted and broken pots. I think that if we tell people you cannot have trellises in your planters or trough feeding tanks, I think that's,
And what
legitimate.
about the grandfathered people, the ones who have more than the?
There's no, and that's a bit of a misnomer. They're grandfathered in the terms that, in the sense that council hasn't addressed it. By the code that applies to cafe spaces, city council has the right to reevaluate, redesignate. So that's there's nothing set in stone. Council could collectively vote to modify it as long as they followed the provisions in there, which,
But I
that
thought there
30
is a
days.
current grandfathering
Well,
in this language.
there's
which is in
language,
the
right,
current
but
code.
there's also, they have the right to, and I don't have the provision.
It's an
memorized.
annual lease.
Listen, I don't want
Yeah.
to,
Right.
please,
They
can we
change
focus,
it. They-
can we focus
City
on
council can vote on. All right, so here's the
the
deal.
design guidelines?
6:52. We're going to end this
I mean,
meeting
this
no
states
later
things
than
out.
8 o'clock tonight, and we got a lot to work through.
Yep.
So let's try and get all the way through the spreadsheet. First section is,
That really encourages discussion.
that's the plan.
Shut up.
Suggesting.
Shut up and talk.
Suggested guidance principles draft for discussion only course. Elements of the cafe spaces must respect design intent of the mall. Materials must be durable, high quality. Individual cafe spaces should be uniform relative to elements and materials. However, the collective goal for all spaces is a variety of appearances, not homogeneity.
I don't
Homogeneity.
necessarily agree with that, but
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Do we want to go on these one item at a time?
That's a little vague, that sentence. I mean,
Yeah.
how do you enforce that one?
Which one? I'm sorry.
The second line. So, okay,
I-
first line, does everybody agree we want high-quality materials? And
Yes.
respect the design
Yeah,
intent of the
I
mall?
think durable and high quality
Yeah.
is good.
Yeah, all right.
And I
So-
think just, based on our walk, that was really helpful. I'd encourage everybody to do the same walk, because I don't know how many times I've walked them all, but I certainly saw new things with the lens of what we're looking at today. One thing I think that came up that we all kind of agreed on, I think, most of us, all three or whatever of us, 2.5, was that, there was definitely a line between plastic materials when we're talking about high quality, durable materials. There was a definite dividing line between plastic and other materials, particularly metals and at certain times woods, but mainly metals when it comes to fences, furniture, and other accessories.
So I think, yes.
so we're good on the first
Good
line.
on the first one. The second one is, in essence, I feel like the intent here is for each individual cafe space should be, and maybe uniform is almost too strong a word, but like all of its features should complement one another. And
Consistent.
Yeah, and consistent.
I would just recommend, it's the second part of the sentence that I disagree with and is not really providing much guidance. And personally, I think it would, to be honest, I'd be in favor of the city owning the barriers. So I would just take off the second half of the sentence.
So after the
Personally,
one
yeah.
from however over, I do feel like it's a little vague.
And I think,
These also, these are the big guiding.
That's right.
principles. These are vague,
True.
and I think it's, yeah.
We're
If
gonna
we
get
take it off,
variety.
that's great.
I don't
There's
think.
gotta
We'll
be
get
variety.
variety, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
better to,
So, I mean, I think,
It's not a policy decision.
agreed.
Yeah,
And
we're
instead
sending
of
colons.
uniform, I heard compatibility, and I think that,
Yeah.
We should be compatible relative,
Or consistent?
consistent and
To,
compatible.
to its, within its
Within
own
its own,
elements
yeah.
or something like that,
Yeah.
compatible with its own elements and materials, or with, anyway. Let somebody else do it.
Within a single cafe space.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
All right. Use of the cafe spaces must respect the design intent of the mall. That was basically said in the first line. Prioritize pedestrian experience over dining experience. For example, maintain sight lines for pedestrians on the mall by minimizing visual obstructions within a cafe space. I almost feel like you could just dial that all the way down to maintain sight lines for pedestrians on the mall by minimalizing visual obstructions within a cafe space.
Yeah, instead of for
Although I
example.
like prioritize pedestrian experience. I mean, I wouldn't say over dining, but that
Okay.
that the mall is a pedestrian, anyway.
Yeah. I would take
But
out
get
the-
rid of the first sentence.
First sentence
We're
is
all
just a
in
repeat.
agreement on
Yeah,
that because it's
that's
already been expressed above.
repetitious. I think
Yeah.
we can take out over dining experience. I think it's fine to say
Okay.
prioritize pedestrian experience. And then, for
For example,
example, et
maintain,
cetera.
yeah.
We could take out, for example,
Yep.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
prioritize pedestrian experience, maintaining sight lines on the mall. We can take out for pedestrians as a second there.
What were you gonna say?
On the mall by minimizing visual obstructions within a cafe space.
I mean, that just makes defensible when
Yep.
something shouldn't be.
The fountains should be accessible with clear space on all sides, not located within cafe spaces or encroached on by cafe railings. Railings and chains should be removed and edges demarcated consistent with ADA requirements.
Is the second thing meant to be included with fountains, or is it meant to be,
It's with fountains, it may be
Our own
even
thing.
necessary.
I feel like this
Okay.
is
got it? It's a city thing.
this is something we could spend the whole hour talking about if we weren't careful. I think from what I've heard, we've all would love for these fountains to be more accessible.
yeah,
Um,
keep the first
I
line.
think there are, yeah, I mean, I think that's maybe our guideline. The fountain should be accessible with clear space on all sides, period. And then,
I'd like to express a minority view that,
Okay.
for instance, in one restaurant on the mall, the Nook, I think, I'm correct, the fountain has been within the space, and it quite complements the space, and it's
Miller's is-
respected. Miller's is,
Yeah,
but
with the Nook, there's.
I guess with
it's
the Nook, it was
squished,
divided
yeah.
up. I thought at one point, the whole thing was within the space, and it seems like it got moved. The space was moved, not the fountain.
yeah, I think that conflicts a little bit with
Let it all
our
be accessible.
the overriding ultimate goal of respecting the design intent of the mall, in that the fountains, I think, were always meant to be publicly accessible.
And I don't think this means that we're necessarily gonna tell Millers that they have to redo their, I mean, unless council does, but I
Right.
think in the future, when they start reorganizing these, it's a guide.
These are
I-
bigger picture guiding principles.
I think the reorganized plans has the
Which is the plan,
fountains,
I'm sure
has
they
it
do.
accessible.
So maybe we just, like, this fountain should be accessible with clear space to the public. I don't know if is that too much?
I feel, if you don't mind me saying, I mean, the second part, sentence unnecessary, but I do feel that if you feel strongly about it, and you don't have to do it now, this is really helping us with the guidelines, but at some point, I think if you believe the fountains should be released from the cafe spaces, you can say that to council. You don't have to say it tonight.
We're gonna talk about this again next
Yeah.
month too, so, maybe we can all take a look, walk up and down and see where they are. I mean, one thing we noticed when we walked the other evening was there was at least one fountain where the height of the railing that's been installed around it by city wasn't taller than the fountain itself. And I felt like, as egregious as the railing was, it was more complimentary to the railing that was, above the top of the fountain. Like, we understand that there's some concerns that city has, and
But I say fountains should be accessible with clear space on all sides,
period.
period, and
I
then.
think they'll like that.
I'm- Yes.
Got it.
The next two, I'm not sure. I have them in there because they're discussion issues, but I'm not sure the
This
wording's
isn't
not good.
currently the
No,
the
everything
city's
that's,
policy, the
everything
law.
that's in yellow is what
Okay,
is a
new.
potential suggestion.
I'd like
So-
to add something to the
I guess I was asking
second
whether
last.
that's what's done currently, even if it's not
That's-
the law or within our guidelines. Is all furniture
What do the
required to be
leases,
removed?
what do the leases say?
No.
There used to
Okay.
be that, what, like March to November, and then it had to be removed.
I think the addition of heaters potentially allows folks to leave them, you know, have cafes open in cooler months.
I would say it's okay to pull that one for a policy recommendation to council. The second one, about cafe spaces not permanent, all elements should be portable, easily removable. Is somewhat I think we need some variation of that because, for example.
I agree with that.
Big troughs filled with dirt,
Yep.
we can't move them. And there are things at certain restaurants that they're not moving, they're in place. And we could address it either as a guidance in some way, because we bounced around, should we say portable, removable, whatever. Doesn't take a machine to move it. But another thing that could be fix that is when we talk about railings and, furniture and tables, is that, you know, a table can be, you know, a 3x3 table. And if you want, you know, you have a bunch of people dining, you pull the 3x3 tables together. But we have some places where they're, you know, very long. and very
Counters,
heavy.
yeah.
So, but.
I like
The other
these two.
Policy thing in favor of that is that restaurants do come and go and cafe, you know, tenants come and go. And somebody, if I decided I wanted a giant replica of the Thinker in the middle of my cafe space and it's tons and I go out of business.
Right.
You know, the Thinker's staying there
The
for a long
frog.
time.
Or the frog, yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, that's just another reason among others.
Yeah, it certainly could be linked to, we know with the tree management plan and other things that are gonna have to occur on the mall, it shouldn't be the city's responsibility to have to go in and, you know, move stuff.
So, all right, starting with one, the off-season,
I'd like to add something to that, just to, I think off-season, but also when a cafe space is not being leased. You know, we had several
I'd rather say that,
situations.
because what's off-season? I mean, I've dined on the mall in February when we've had a
Yeah.
warm day and somebody dragged.
Yeah, there's
I know that-
probably
I know
some
the leases
language.
aren't there, but
Yeah.
restaurants do it, and
Yeah.
it's,
yeah,
you know.
Well, they sometimes will lease it, but they'll leave the furniture out there, stacked up there
I mean,
for
I'm just
months.
questioning what
Yeah.
is season? Season
Yeah.
has no definition,
Yeah.
and none of us would agree on it anyway. So, I would say when the lease is not in, when the lease
Being
is
actively
terminated or
used,
when
yeah.
it's whatever.
I think maybe more broadly said is that, you know, when cafe spaces are not actively being used, you know, discourage or encourage the removal of furniture. And,
Yeah.
you know, that's a broad term. It doesn't say get stuff out of here, or when not in use for a continuous period. But you're right, we have spaces that are not leased and there's still railings and,
Mhm. Yeah.
so I think it would be, and it's not telling anybody they can or can't do anything, it just is a matter of guidance that when something is not being used continuously, we encourage, you know, the removal of.
I actually would dissent on using words like consider and encourage, because they're just wiggle room
I
for,
know.
I would say, you know, when space is not being used, remove furniture, period.
yeah, I think the
That's-
tricky part
that's-
there is.
That's the law that we want.
The tricky part there is then, okay, well, it's 3 AM, they're not using the space. Remove the furniture.
Let me,
So I guess I meant when they're not using it within the
Within the
lease
lease.
term.
let me tinker with that one. I don't want to
Okay.
get
Yeah,
stuck in
yeah,
it,
I
'cause
think
I
we
think
need
we all
to
Get
know.
stuck.
review the leases
Yeah.
and sort of, we've seen a couple different things. When we walked around, we saw there's some, you know, where they had everything stacked up and chained up in the corner, and that, you know, oh, it's nice and clear, but it actually didn't look movable. You know, I think, yeah, we could work on the language there, like portable and easily movable by 2 able-bodied people, like, you know, don't need a forklift.
Leave it as a guideline, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
It's just a principle.
All right, now let's get into kind of the elements and specifics. So, first and foremost are the fences, railings. Again, I think in white is what's currently in the guidelines, in yellow is the suggested revision or addition.
So in this example, is the 30-inch maximum height a change, or are we just adding that?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, there is
Currently,
no
there's
max height.
Okay.
Height restriction, and I think,
Is that counter height 30 or
Yeah,
higher?
it's table height, which is really nice.
30, 32, it's,
Because the counter is a little higher, yeah.
You said the existing ones range from 30-something to 40?
these tables are 28 and a half,
Okay.
just for reference.
yeah, and the most of them were 35, 36,
The railings were? So
Mhm.
30 would,
in that range.
30
Um,
would make many of them non-conforming.
No, we wouldn't, this would be for any new. So if someone comes in and says, I want to, like with Paramount, where they did the neat
But-
ornamental, that was a year or two ago. So now I would say, yeah, you can do it, but it can't be any higher than
Right,
that.
isn't that called non-conforming? They
Well,
exist, but they don't conform to new laws?
These aren't, this isn't an ordinance. This would be, we could make it that I would go and inventory what's on the mall now, and if someone on March 1st is using the same railing now.
So, I know you've measured some of them, but I wonder if, can we task you to do that between now and the October meeting? And then we'll, like, you've looked at all of them, okay.
We'll go,
Did
yeah, we
Kate
can,
say yes?
we can, I mean, we can do that.
Well, I guess the reason I'm asking is because if there's like, if there's an average and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, you know what, they're actually all under 38, and then we can live with that, then maybe that's the rule, and we
I
can just,
I mean, I can,
30 inches seems a little low to me,
Me
but,
too.
and I'd rather have a 36-inch open rail than a 30-inch solid panel rail. So I'd be in favor with a little bit more latitude if the visually,
that's-
more visually
so
open.
that's in the questions for discussion column.
So, but we are all supportive of some height limit?
I think so.
Mhm,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
To his point, right now, the way it's written, somebody could
Yeah. Just to
zip
get
tie
some
a board
consensus.
wall up to this railing and like. make
I
a
like,
wall.
I like your idea of, let's find out what the average is, or let's get an accounting of what the, most of the railings are.
most of them are 35 and 36. I mean, I have the spreadsheet if you
So
want to see it.
35 or
I just-
36 to the chain, to the top of the panel, and then what, like,
Top of the rail. I didn't measure the bollards, we just measured the rail. And
So-
yes, there's some half-inch in differences, but that's,
Yeah.
and do we want to differentiate between the two?
I would
Well,
say,
mean, my suggestion would be, say, 42-inch max, and that's the top of the bollards, and if they lower things from that, it's.
42's,
That's pretty tall.
It gets
That's
pretty tall.
noticeably high. And I think the point here is to say, when someone comes in with a new railing, that we have a height. If someone wants to remove the one they have, they can, but they don't have to. But if they come in with a new railing,
So it'd be good
around
to
the
know what
carousel out
existing
here,
Max height is.
yeah, it's.
And I think top of rail is the thing. I mean, nobody's gonna put, a bollard 12 inches above the rail.
But above, we're saying
Maybe
that
not.
the cafe spaces are not permanent, and that all elements, furniture, railings, planters should be portable and easily removable. Now, we know in reality that those railings don't really get moved in the winter, right?
Not
But
anymore.
as of March 1st, if we purposefully are making, and I'll use it again, more than 50%, say, non-conforming, that's tough. I mean, what if somebody happens to remove the rails from the mall to repaint them or to
I mean,
repair them or something?
not- I'm
and
not
brings the
looking to
same
be-
railing back out
Yeah, I'm
next
not looking to be
year.
draconian here. It really is to say when someone comes and says, I'm making a new railing, we know what's out there. Or they say, I'm getting the railing from Rapture and using it. Yeah, we know what that one is, that's fine. But no one's gonna come in and say, I'm gonna build a 48-inch railing.
Yeah, I think-
Also, if we find out that all the railings are around 36 or under, and we make it 36, then we don't have to worry about it.
That's kind of where I was going.
Thinking too.
And if there's one that's 38, then it.
That it
we can
is,
have-
yeah.
Then we go to 38 or even
No,
have.
well,
a
no,
rail.
there's some that like are in 40, and I really don't want to go that high, but
Right,
I'm
right.
not saying they have to remove it.
So
It's
let's-
just that new railings would have to.
Yeah,
36.
Okay.
so I
So
think
36, okay.
we'll say 36 tonight. I think between now and October,
And are
see
we-
what the average is, see what the highs and the lows, and kind of, then we'll have a little more information to help guide
And
your
also
decision.
note that we want to say if that's the highest element, like if there's a chain that's
Mhm.
lower, but the bollards are higher, or whatever that is, that would be the.
Well,
I mean,
curiously, we treat-
I'm
Yeah,
just
you're
saying
right.
we should define what we're
Yeah.
talking about, that,
I got no
that
problem
height
with
limit.
the lower side of things.
Do we
Uh,
make
I don't
any
know if
qualification about,
ABC does, like,
do we make a line
Just
item
says
about
height
how
railing.
solid the
so
railing
that's,
is?
so that's a good, thank you, that's a good sequitur.
I would like to propose no solid panels.
I
I don't
agree
think
with
that's
that.
that
Agreed.
necessary,
I
actually.
disagree, but I don't know
Oh.
how to lose that fight.
That's cheaper, so I don't, somebody might, but
I just don't see like the countertops, that there are three different, at least three that have countertops and kind of a solid panel there. And
Wait till we get to
I don't find it
countertops.
distracting, and I don't- honestly, you're just looking at people's legs otherwise.
Wait till
Like
we
right
get to
now.
Like right
countertops.
now, everyone can see my nasty shins.
Also, I think if you have a countertop that has a solid panel underneath it, it becomes one of those things
It's
that's
a-
probably hard to
It's a furniture.
call temporary.
well, I think we encourage, design. I certainly always have. And there was one railing that was at Splendor's. It was really cool, but I think when they moved, they took it with them. But I mean, certainly we can entertain alternatives, but I think we could state that the preference is for open, but
I mean, is this the
it's
type of
something
thing
I
that
can bring to you all.
We put this as a guideline, and then someone would come to us with something different if they wanted something
If
different?
they
Right.
wanted to, yes.
That's right.
Okay, so
Yeah.
like Floree, I think, has
Right.
a really beautiful enclosure that violates everything that we want.
I think they came to us, actually.
They probably did a long time ago.
Yeah,
I'm
that's not
sure
a,
Yeah.
it's not a
Been there for
cafe
long
space.
time,
That's, was treated separately.
But as an
yeah.
example.
You're right, and it's, they built a wooden seats that are higher than the rails. So when we talk about height, that's why we also, talking about other things, the furniture that's there, the plants that are there. So,
Are
Right,
we,
so-
are we wed that metal is supposed to, wrought iron metal or iron is supposed to be the only materials there?
Yes.
I
Yes.
mean, it looks like
And that gets
currently
rid of
that's not an
concern for
issue.
wood planks.
Yeah, I think having that pretty well defined keeps us from going in every certain
Okay.
direction.
Just want to ask.
I'd like to propose not putting design variation encouraged. Similar to the discussion on the earlier point, I would remove the design variation encouraged. That scares me.
It's going to happen
Um,
anyway.
We'll have variety even within this.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to encourage it, but we don't necessarily have to discourage it.
Right.
Just, stay moot.
discouraging
Yeah,
solid
mute.
panels. I think that would.
Discourage.
I would
solid
not
panels.
allow solid panels if I were king.
There you go.
I'm not gonna make us stay late for that.
I was persuaded. I'm come over to your camp now.
I don't know, I guess this falls into fencing, but another idea that came up, which I'm in favor of, is creating some rules for fencing. So we noticed a lot of fence that ran right next to or touched trees. There were fences that were kind of maybe like too close to a tree or could have been moved a little bit to conform more with the sort of decorative pattern of the paving. I think that, and this is probably not something we want to get hung up on right now, but I think that there are certain general sort of rules we can make, like you have to be so far off a tree, you have to be, within a certain, or you can't be like, for instance, on the granite strip, right? That there might be some.
Well, they can't be,
I'm
yeah.
wondering if the Wolf Josie plan.
Well, the
addresses
city
some of that,
says
too.
where the bound
Yeah.
perimeter is, so that should be something that the city.
Yeah, and I have this down for one of the policy recommendations to council is that because we looked at some that were like rubbing right against the trees. Now, that's where the space is set right now. So the recommendation would be council would be, that we don't have those conflicts. So I.
A certain amount of space between corrals.
That's
like
right.
5 feet or something between, I don't know.
Again, that could be the blue space on the map is set.
Yeah.
And so to move that or change that would take council, and I think we should make a recommendation to them, but we don't have to do that as part of the guidelines. Yeah.
Again, I'm wondering if, Breck, you seem to infer that Wolf Josie had sort of already done that.
There is
So,
a revised plan.
let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's see what they did first, and hopefully it's just fine, and then we'll go with it.
You mean to recommend what's in the Wolf Josie?
Let's see what they show, yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause my guess is they.
So for the railings,
show
just
that.
quickly, fences, chains, bollards, we used to allow chains. I say, my suggestion is leave everything there, metal, black.
Yep.
The only thing was to change the height, and that there's no need to have a minimum or a maximum, I'm sorry, a minimum diameter for the
Yeah.
bollards. I
Yeah.
think we could,
Silly.
The maximum we keep.
I think that we should say they're not wider than 3, right?
Yeah.
But they don't have to even have bollards.
I don't think we have the max. I mean, we say don't have the solid panel. I mean, I don't know how, I mean, a lot of these things are, someone
Gonna-
comes up with them. they
Well, it
figure
might
out
be
they
also
don't-
sort of a structural
and,
thing.
Yeah,
where if it
3
ends up
inches is
being-
like this, and that, when it's, 36 inches tall, I don't know, maybe it's just,
Proportions.
yeah.
A Vitruvian pillar.
Well, it's not, yeah, I'm not totally.
I'm fine.
It just-
Those
It's
are
still,
not.
it has to be removable in the end,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it can only be so large and
heavy.
heavy.
But I do think eliminating at least eliminate the diameter minimum.
That's right.
Yeah.
And just one final, hopefully, note on the solid panels. I do think I'd prefer not to allow solid panels because going back to some of our overriding guidelines of minimizing visual obstructions, like as you're walking, especially on the uphill slope of the mall, like some of those cafes far ahead of you are actually at your eye level, and that really does start to block your view and sense of openness, so.
It was actually really nice to see the Halpern, or I don't know who made that quote, but to actually see that and link it back to the original design intent. So when we talk about elements of the cafe must respect the design intent, what are we talking about? Being able to just have those at our disposal, you know, and be
Yeah, like the
recognized.
handwritten note about like too much clutter under the tree. Does there have to be a bench under every tree? All right, move to tables and chairs. Currently, wrought iron or silver tone metal, I think, is what is allowed. And, well, black and silver tone metal. We're trying to steer away from plastic or the faux wood. I think that's up for discussion. I mean, there's some composite materials look nice, but it's
So,
just.
yeah, so according to the guidelines, and I know because Cami came, one of the first cafe spaces I looked at, Jack Brown's, they were gonna use picnic tables. And she said, well, as long as they're painted, and I don't know if they actually did them or not, but, you know, so you can have wood if it's painted. So that was the one question. The second would be
But our guidelines don't say that we would paint it.
I know, but they,
So Cammy just screwed that one up.
well, we did collectively. And then, but I think that faux wood, the composite material we know has been allowed, so I'm fine with that. It's the faux wood that looks like fake wood, and I think that if it's painted black, so not trying to get too into the weeds here, but composite
I'd vote
material.
against, I'd vote against the faux wood myself. I don't know, like, I know there's higher qualities, but at the end of the day, they tend to look kind of tired, you know, after a couple of years, and, that would just be mine.
What about like
Personal
where tables where there are several examples in there of frames that were metal, but they have a wood or faux wood infill panel? Because those come in a range of different qualities. I could imagine actually a fairly high quality table having that.
Yeah.
The tricky part is how do you enforce it?
Right,
Well,
right.
It's a
Well, but
slippery
Jeff's
slope.
suggestion here says composite would be by VAR review.
Yeah, that's true. It'd always be
So
an option.
we're just saying no plastic or actual wood.
Yeah.
I think I'm in the minority here, but I would like to see a highly regulated architectural elements, like the fences and the bollards, and really lay off of the kind of decorative elements, let a restaurant pick its own furniture. And you know, I think it's a slippery slope. There's a lot of composite materials. I mean, there are plastics that are beautiful. And I don't know how you go about it. Like, that doesn't bother me.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
approved, and so my question was primarily,
The Bizou chairs are not objectionable
So
to
then
me,
by
and
having
they-
it,
And they can stack them and get them out of the way,
I mean, I
which is an
guess-
advantage of some.
by having it still contingent on BAR review, that lets us at least
Yeah.
make sure they're not getting just super cheap plastic lawn chairs.
yeah, when I say faux wood, I mean that it's meant to look like stained wood versus what the composite, which we have approved.
And when you say, kind of let the furniture be as it is, you're still maintaining a consistency from dining space to dining space, because the thing I've found kind of a lot of visual noise and a lot of, visual pollution was like that other, go back to that other slide, just the different chairs and
It's,
all the different materials together,
Within
within one
It's a-
space, yeah. so
Sorry,
like,
it's down here.
Wherever that was. You start to see it just in that one photo, just with the,
Mhm.
3 different style chairs,
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it just turns into a lot of clutter.
I just feel like once we start getting into cushions and umbrellas and some of the other things that are on this list, tablecloths, that feels like, why wouldn't a restaurant be able to?
Well, that's where
choose-
No,
I
that-
could imagine the personalization happens, is you keep the more permanent elements of the seating and tables and railings fairly quiet, and let those other
Yeah.
things be the color.
I mean,
Yeah.
tablecloth's the next line, I would almost take that and say we don't need to approve the color, but it should be cloth,
Yep.
like, just not a plastic tablecloth or something.
There are restaurants on the mall that never use tablecloths.
Yes.
You don't have to, but
Right.
if they choose to, it should be real cloth. Is that out of line?
Well, it says we're bar approved, so again,
I was saying take that out.
oh.
So I'll concur with Roger, and if our colleague Ron were here,
Don't put words in his mouth, he's not here.
well, he's a libertarian, and I think if you're listening, Ron, call in right now. I mean, these are, it's public space, but if we're regulating tablecloths, how in the heck are staff going to regulate that when other things in the mall aren't currently regulated? I mean, I would rather that, I mean, I agree, architectural elements, the big things, get the big cabinets out, lower height, have some visibility of sight line when, either wheelchair pedestrians or adults are walking down the mall, that you have a clear line, and I'll get rid of all the stuff that is illegally outside of the cafe spaces, but over-regulating what goes on in these spaces does not help us. Restaurants have had a hard time. They're still having a hard time, if anybody hasn't noticed. Restaurants are still closing. Restaurants are an asset to the downtown mall. They do bring people here besides special events that the Pavilion has and other venues have, but it was one of the original things that brought people to the mall, the hardware store, Sal's, and Miller's. C&O is off the mall, but, I mean, those were draws to the downtown mall when not much was happening in the downtown
Okay.
historic district. So I would augur to give the owners a little bit more freedom and not overreach aesthetically. I mean, you can, I'm not saying that I disagree with Breck's aesthetic, that he would rather furniture be consistent and the flourishes be on the details, but I just wonder about our ability to police that.
Oh, I don't think we should regulate the tablecloths or seat cushions as long as they're removed nightly.
No, that's what I meant.
Sure.
Yeah. But I would extend types of chairs. Frankly, right there, every time I go, since they dragged that heavy wrought iron chair, I go straight to it and sit there. I love those new wrought iron chairs. They are not anything like what Petit Pois uses anywhere else, but they're my favorite piece of furniture now. And they're white and they violate the, supposedly our guidelines.
So I would,
But they're very lovely.
so I would suggest that for, right now that the guidelines for tablecloths and cushions are that they be cloth. I think that if we say that they be cloth, then they removed,
What's cloth, though? Is cloth polyester? I mean, are
Well,
we talking about natural fibers? Are we, how far down the rabbit hole
or you
of
just-
regulation are we going?
we're not regulating anybody. This is currently what's there, although I haven't had anybody ask me about tablecloths on the mall. And I haven't reviewed any seat cushions, but
I don't see tablecloths in here.
it is.
They are in
Cloth
there.
tablecloths and removable seat cushions are permitted.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm willing to not fall on my sword for the tablecloths. If you allow some plastic tablecloths with a red and white checker, go for it.
As long as they take them down at night.
But so.
I do worry about the tables and chairs because if you allow whatever you want, people are gonna have car tables up
I'm-
there and folding
I'm,
chairs and.
I'm not saying allow whatever we want. I agree with the proposal here, and I agree a composite or other things could come before us, including faux wood or whatever. Completely agree with that suggestion.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm from Baltimore, and we covered the table with, the old
Newspaper.
newspaper.
Right.
So, but I think if I can, I agree with you on the tablecloth. Tables and chairs, colors. You jumped over chains and bollards to tablecloths. Where'd you fall on the tables and chairs?
I think we're still discussing it.
Okay, sorry.
So wrought iron metal composite comes to the BAR. I mean, do we just want to say if it's not wrought iron or metal, then it should come to the BAR and that allows people
I think that's fine.
to propose plastic or
Yeah.
wood or whatever else they
That's a
want?
good way of putting it.
And the same thing with the black or silver tone.
Yeah.
Other materials.
I have no problem with white,
Yeah.
nice quality.
That's right,
chairs.
and I think that's how we can
Yeah.
manage it, right? Is
Right.
that it allows for a greater variety of stuff, but we can still maintain a higher level of quality out on the downtown mall.
Where's my
And can
colors?
some of this, instead of BAR approval, be administrative approval? Would
It
that-
always-
It
I
is
mean,
all.
Right now, cafe spaces are, some of the things that are noted as, I'm looking for where we have white, some of the different colors of chairs with green, we have white,
Yep.
I'm in favor, I'm going to make sure I'm understanding. I'm in favor
Yeah.
of keeping the black or silver tone for tables and chairs. Is that where we
That
are?
that is the, standard.
The
Yes.
admin approval route. If
Right.
you want something different, you come to us.
Gotcha. Yep.
Or,
Subject to, or subject to bar approval.
question is what, it's sort of, once you do it once, it's so you've got, the question would be,
so wood would not be permitted, which is right there.
right, like the faux, I would say, no, that's not per the guidelines. And, so there are some things that won't,
Like
Be
a faux
allowed.
rattan.
yeah, or maybe they need to go get a can of spray paint for those chairs, but, at Bijou, is that,
Well, again, we said that those would be, they'd have to just come to us if it was,
okay,
yeah.
They're non-conforming.
That's right.
okay.
That's the word.
Like,
Gotcha.
we've got our standard.
Yeah.
If you want to try something else, come ask us. Never hurts to ask. All right,
Sizes of the table,
I'm not gonna regulate that.
You can always
Why?
move the
It
table.
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
well,
Sizes
to
of
me,
the table?
Sizes of the tables?
it's where, we've got things that have become somewhat
I feel the counters that are on the perimeters of the areas are not great for pedestrian. It's awkward and
Is that,
it's become quite a like piece of furniture.
Yeah, it feels more permanent than.
And you have
But
people.
I think that's one of those things that if someone wanted to build that now, it would be something that is not permanent, and it would probably come to us. And then-
It didn't.
Well,
it got- just got
I mean,
built.
That was past,
Yeah.
I think,
past is past.
yes.
I mean, I don't mean that in a smile-like way. I can't change what we can't change right now, but moving forward, when someone, you know,
So I feel like we need to add a line for countertops specifically, because you've got serving counters, but nowhere else do you have like a dining countertop, I'll call
Dining
it.
counter.
That's, I
Bar
guess that would
top,
be called
right.
I think Breck's
What
point
is-
is that is called a table because it's somewhere that
Right,
a
it's
chair
a,
pulls up and people eat at.
it's
even
essentially
though-
a high top,
even
but
though we
it's
know
like a
high
bar,
top
yeah.
Counter, but.
Right, I
but
mean,
yeah.
I still feel like it almost, either we just, like, are we saying they're okay? Like, do we like them, do we not? Like,
Well, I guess the question was large tables, and I think there is a separate discussion to be had about that type of the high counter. But is there a reason we wouldn't want a big table of like 6 or 8 at a cafe? Just asking. If
just
it
to be
could be
very
moved.
candid, what we've got are some extended, very long tables made of stone. They are
Oh,
somewhat permanent, if you will. They're not, you know, and I think that it's that, I'm not saying the cafe spaces should be like, you know, a mash unit that, you know, can bust down and be gone in an hour. But I think we are seeing semi-permanent installations on the mall that, you know, we can allow, if we said a table can be this size or that size, then you can allow a lot of them, but when you know, build a 20-foot long table with a marble countertop,
You're
you
staking
are,
a claim.
where is that, 20 feet long?
I don't know the exact dimension, but they're long.
Are you talking about the cafe height?
No,
Oh,
It's one
somewhere
of the
else?
countertops, I guess, Sal's or at, is it
there's one in
Hamptons that
front
does
of
it?
the old bank there,
Or Fitzroy?
yeah.
Someone's got
Yeah,
that one.
Fitzroy.
Like in the middle of the
It's not
mall.
Hamilton's.
And Citizen Burger, so all three of them, like they're all next to each other. Can we just say, and it'll be vague, but it would be, you know, countertops and bar tops should be approved by the BAR.
Citizen Burger, sorry.
Yeah, they've got a big countertop as well, facing City Space, I think.
I would just offer that
Sorry.
you're deferring a decision to the BAR, but still not offering guidance on.
If you guys want to say
I-
they're discouraged, you can say they're
No,
discouraged.
I don't mean it that way, I'm sorry. I'm
No,
not-
I know, but I think
just-
other,
yeah.
some people might want to discourage them. I'm trying to just hurry us along.
Yeah, I don't want to, now, I mean, I think they're there because they provide some benefit to the restaurateur, and I wish I knew more about exactly why. To me, when they're on the perimeter is when they're more of an issue. If they were internal, maybe it would be less of an issue, or high tops, I could imagine being on the inside of a barrier and not being so much of an issue. But when they're on the edge, they just create a taller fence and taller wall, more opaque experience, and it puts diners like right at eye level with pedestrians walking just a few feet away, which is awkward,
yeah,
I think.
I also think it's potentially a loophole around your railing, right? Because if you could end up building like a high top bar seating all the way around your cafe, then you've got.
It's like a fortress.
Right.
Yeah.
Seating should not create an opaque fence condition. Some better language than that, but.
I mean, I think
Tables should not.
I think a high tops is being independent pieces of furniture.
They really don't
with
even
a certain,
usually have
with a
seats.
limited length.
Yeah.
We're talking about a continuous countertop.
Counter, yeah.
And I think some of the ones in question are probably made of stone, so that probably doesn't comply, conform.
What if the counters were on, we just say they can't be on the edge of the, parallel to the downtown mall
Or
itself?
pedestrian ways,
Yeah.
pedestrian walks.
Or
I don't
just
know,
say
I
they-
kind of want to sit out and watch people walk by. I mean, it's sort of like pulling up your rocking chair.
Okay,
I
we're
I don't know.
prioritizing the pedestrian experience.
Yeah,
Well, it does- I
I'm not
mean-
thinking that this is an aesthetic problem.
Mhm.
A lot of the tables and chairs incidentally face towards the mall.
I think what it does is when you're no longer in the mall, like when it's just like there's an inside and it reinforces an inside and an outside, which is kind of anti-public in my mind, and as opposed to tables and chairs that are within the space of the downtown mall.
And it does decrease visibility, one of the original design intents, we saw today.
So these spaces are leased for $5 a square foot. Does not generate a tremendous amount of revenue for the city. They're not owned, and I mean, look, I live downtown, you all know that for a long time. I come downtown, go out downtown, but I do think that there is a, you know, we hear so often of, you know, what they do in Europe and here and there, or in New York City where there are parks that people can move their chairs around. And well, we've created these places, they're no longer temporary, they've become permanent year-round. I think that idea of a cafe space where you can go and pull a chair up and move a table around, but then there's places that it's almost as they own it. I mean, if I were being snarky to the council, I'd say you might as well just go sell them that real estate and let them do whatever. I think it's that, you know, that idea of that closing off, that walling off. We've got a lot of successful cafes on the mall with minimalist railings, with tables and chairs that can be moved. If we feel like that's important, then we should say so. But I don't want to capitulate to, oh gosh, we'll never be able to change anything. I mean, it's again, council will get to debate all these, and so if you know. But I think that the height of the rails and the height of the counters, you know, sort of sets that tone. So if your railing's only this high, you know, and your tables are only this high, well, then you're solving the problem of, you know, 40-inch railings and then suddenly 40-inch bar top. 'Cause one of the questions I have in here is, you know, what about bar tops and bar chairs? So, sorry, I don't mean to keep throwing you guys curveballs, but this is stuff I get asked all the time. And, so, can we just, tell you what?
Do we want to regulate the height of tables, which would in the
Counters,
future, yeah, get rid of that counter, I mean, in the future?
I think, well, the goal is to, it sounds like a lot of people have the goal of trying to keep these transparent. So why don't we just say that seating and tables should not create a visual barrier, and we'll just deal with it as it comes? Which I think is pretty clear that you can't, that discourages you from putting a bar up against the edge of a patio enclosure. But it does leave some openness to, figure things out. So I know that's really crappy language, but something
I
along those
think
lines that is
works.
just trying to
I think it's a
keep
good
that transparency.
compromise that we all agreed with. But the first question was, do we want to not have big tables? And I didn't know what, maybe
That's why
height-wise, yes, but
I mean,
I
that's-
just wondered what's
Right.
wrong with a table for six?
Well, that's why.
I don't have an issue with
I don't either. I think
large
that's why I
tables.
was asking if we could add a line to this spreadsheet
Or
that specifically addresses high tops, countertops, bar tops, whatever you want to call that. Because I think it's different than a
Maybe no
cafe
serving
table.
top can be higher than whatever.
Well, he's got a line for serving counters.
Okay.
Um,
Well, I would say the top of a table is somewhere where you get served too.
Okay.
And I know that's a different term, but,
Right.
you know.
I would make a distinction between a continuous bar top or continuous countertop,
Right.
Yeah.
what do you call them, just the singular bar tops.
Since we're Patrick's left, we're all gonna have to watch our video, and I'm gonna be going, what did he say? So, pull your microphone.
Okay. So in terms of the just cafe tables, I don't think we have nobody in the BAR has any objections to size of table.
No.
Rick stroking his beard.
Thank you,
Hmm?
everyone.
No.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
No.
I think we would like, before the October meeting, if y'all could add a line in the spreadsheet to address continuous countertops. We'll just call it that for now. And that, at least for the interim, we'll have, our recommendation be that they don't visually obstruct the pedestrians' views. Which comes back up to our, one of our.
Storage shelves.
Well, no, it comes up to one of our overriding goals, right? minimize visual obstructions. All right. Storage shelves, cabinets, metal, black, I'd say, or silver tone, if silver tone is the color of your cafe. I think the max height on this would be nice if it was at the railing height, but I recognize it's kind of tough because servers are gonna be like stooping over all the
Right.
time, getting plates and stuff, so.
So there is a, under the vendors section, it's actually in our packet, there's racks and bookcases. And it says only one vending rack shall be allowed per vendor. The rack shall be no longer than 4 feet, no more than 6 feet high. No rack shall be allowed unless it is associated with a stand or table. All racks must be within the space allotted for the vendor stand. Rack shall be black or silver tone. So I think that all those, we could just turn that into something for storage cabinets.
Yeah, I guess the
I think
question
the-
is,
Yeah, the point is we don't want a storage cabinet that's opaque, that's like the one that was shown,
big
But-
box.
that basically is a big closet.
But
Yeah.
we're allowing it for, I mean, the vendor stands are much smaller than the cafe spaces, so.
But they're
theoretically,
they're leaving at night.
Are they?
And they're not
Vendors
there
are
all the
not
time.
permanent.
That was a suggestion.
Somebody tell me what the
I mean,
difference
I'd be
is.
fine if it were removed nightly. I think
What's a
some,
vendor stand?
you could,
Show you.
Does that mean a
Like,
rack?
You see the guys with the tables out that they sell shirts.
they rent
and
the
food
space to
and-
sell
Oh,
to
yes.
other-
But I've never
I'm not
seen
talking
one
about
that's
them right now.
I've never seen a cabinet that's.
No, none of them have a
Okay.
cabinet, but I'm just saying, it's in
Yeah.
our guidelines right there, and it seems
So
like that would
the-
apply easily to
In the, I think, I don't know, personally, I'm focused on the cafes.
Yeah, so what I'm talking
Vendor
about,
stands are
Right.
a.
transient.
No, I know, but I'm trying to say that's some language we could use
I see
for.
what you're saying, gotcha.
yeah.
I like some of the openness of some, like
Right,
this one
I was
on the
gonna say
left. You can essentially see
Shelves
through
that
it.
are, yeah, that,
The one that's
are
just a
not
big
solid.
black box that has doors, that's on one of these slides, is a little more egregious.
Some of it is
The
that,
middle's a little, is pretty cluttery,
Little-
but,
yeah, it's that, it's like that all the time.
you know, I
type of
also
stuff,
feel
so-
like, you know, Carl kind of hinted this earlier, where if things are in the middle section, I don't know, it's like, you see across the mall, you also see up and down the mall, so it's really tricky.
I mean, those seem like those could easily be wheeled in, or they probably are wheeled
They
in
are.
at the end of the day, and that seems like a goal
but
is.
these are pretty permanent. I think.
Right.
But most of the stuff comes off
I would
of them,
get-
I would think.
Furniture out of there and
So I would maybe
Be removable.
suggest
Mhm.
that open, you know, if it's elevated, that it's open,
Yeah.
and that there's no permanent storage, would be,
And no locking up, because that's what makes it permanent,
Mhm.
and then stuff gets stored in there and then it's there forever.
Right.
So open above a certain height?
If you wanna have like a lower lockable piece or something.
well, if you're moving it in at night, then you can do you could use what you want.
But then
Right?
you could have, yeah, but then you could have a big giant black box that you can't see through during the day when people are
There
there.
you go, right there.
Who
If you
cares,
roll- If it was on
who
wheels.
cares what it looks like at night when nobody's around?
Yeah, that's,
Well, I mean,
Decent point right
these
there.
restaurants, there's a lot of times, you know, on the mall and the businesses, I mean, especially, there's a strikingly few of these places that are open for lunch. So, I mean, there are a lot of times when you're down there and things are not open.
Fair enough.
we've
Not
been-
just that thing needs to, sorry.
I guess it's almost
That
iconic
would
by
be
now.
open. That's a good example of something that's open.
We have inventoried the hours that these places are open, and the days that they are open, and it's an amazing amount of time that they are not being used. But again, that's another part of the policy decision, but, you know, these are not, very, very few of these spaces are used, breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Agreed. It's a big problem.
All right, serving counters.
I think I've got, you know, I'd come back with something about addressing continuous counters and the visual.
Yeah.
I think something about the storage shelving and cabinets, about open shelves above the railing, and no outdoor storage. I think, if you don't mind, the planters and the plant heights would be one to
Yeah,
really.
so we got 15 minutes. Why don't we focus on the planners and planner heights, because it'll probably take that amount of time. And then, do we want
The
to
rest.
also think about a work session in between now and the October meeting to keep hammering through this in a couple weeks or something?
I'd be happy to
Okay.
join something.
So freestanding planters, currently the guidelines say they should be terracotta or concrete. The revision is just suggested to say no plastic. Should colors, designs be reviewed, you know? This is starting to get to where I think some of Roger's points were well taken in terms of
agree.
letting the
I think that,
restaurateurs have
you
some
know,
creativity, but
yeah.
again, it's like, we want to avoid cheapness.
correct. And I think that it's, to me, you know, we've got really good examples of eclectic planter, you know, groupings that I think look fine. So to me, it's a function of size. Again, that, you know, not a metal feeding trough or a, you know, something that no one can move.
Right.
And height relative to the plants. You know, certainly a height limit. I don't think a planter should be taller than the railing, but I think, you know, the idea of, you know, should there, what is a height? And I would say that we don't want fake plants, but you all can certainly allow them.
And then they have to be within the cafe space.
That's a function of the ordinance, so that you all don't have to establish that. They have them hanging on the railing, according to zoning, that is outside of the space, unless it's hung on the inside of the railing. I have no problem with them being inside the railings, unless you all did.
I mean, that's up to the restaurateur if they want to use their space for plants.
Right.
So that would be a, you know, the, I would say that it's, you know, they're quality material, that they're complementary, and, you know, a height of not higher than the railing. I don't know, Breck, what's a too big a pot to move? 36 inches, 30 inches?
Probably 30 inches, yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
30 inches circumference, or I mean, diameter, and,
I'd agree with limiting the pot to a certain,
and then,
Diameter or
diameter.
size, general size.
The-
That helps regulate the.
The size of the
feed
plant.
trough. Well,
Yeah.
the size of the plant, but also it helps us
Right.
get rid of the feed troughs. And so the size, especially height of the plants, so even if these plants are inside the railing, if you've got an 8-foot tall, like.
Leland cypress,
Right,
for
Arbor
example,
vitae
just
or
by,
something.
no, there are Leland
Or if you're
cypresses
creating a
that-
hedge, basically,
Right.
a potted hedge.
Correct, that's what we'd like to avoid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And so.
those need to go.
I think there's a sense of, again, getting back to our minimizing visual obstructions, like,
Do you want to say 36 inches, 40 inches for
So
plants? What do you
worries
think?
me is like the palms and the ferns and the tall grasses, I think are really beautiful.
Yeah.
And really contribute.
I agree.
And they get really tall.
they can,
So I don't want to say, you know, set a height limit.
yeah, and they cut
But
them and they're ugly.
If you're dead set on not having a hedge, then maybe we just say plants should not form a solid hedge.
Well, it's not their brick. It's not their space. I mean,
But
they're
even-
allowed to have people sit out there and eat, but they don't own it. That belongs to the
So that's
city.
what I'm saying. Like, so if
I
we
mean,
have a guideline that says
there's
it's
no
gonna make a
more
solid hedge.
domesticating, thing that you can do is put your plants all around something.
Well, just so I'm clear, which part of what I said are you arguing? Are you concerned, like, are you concerned about the palm trees being that tall, or is it, because I'm agreeing, I mean, I'm saying if you want to get rid of the hedges, just.
I
say no
think
hedge.
that puts me in, I mean, we had earlier this evening, you know, a misunderstanding about the height of a new and existing fence.
You're saying don't
It puts
limit
me in the
to-
spot, that- and I don't disagree, I think there are, it's like, we don't want a full length, and that's what we're seeing right now on the mall, is,
But that's not what that is.
No, not
You know,
these,
we
but
all
that's
agree.
what we're
Do you
seeing that in
have
exactly
a
one place.
photo, do you have a photo?
I think this is actually a really great pairing because I want to bring up a distinction here, and maybe it's too much nuance, but the one on the right I actually have no problem with because it is actually calling attention to the business's entrance. Like in my mind, the mall should still be about the storefronts. Like, that's where you enter the business, that's where the business owns the property, that's where their signage should be located.
Except they are
But
on
the
the mall.
spaces on the interior, away from the building facades, that's really the space of the mall and where we have the possibilities long, continuous views. So I don't know if that's too much nuance to bring, but I kind of see it a little bit differently on the things that are on the interior of the mall versus things that are at the building edge and related to building
Yeah, for the record,
business openings.
Yeah, that's not a cafe space, but it showed an assortment of planters. So I understand what you're saying, is I just don't want to have to make a determination on whether that's a, full hedge, partial hedge, that's somewhat obstructed or semi-obstructed. I think, but I think if you, would we all agree that some height of plants, at least not, we don't want to hedge, so I need to come up with some language that allows some,
I think prohibiting hedges is a good way of describing that. It would be, I mean, people know what a hedge is. It's where you really can't see through. And the palms, for example, would not be that. They might exceed a height limit that we would set, but I think a hedge does describe something that we're trying to not have on the mall.
Okay.
So I think that is a good kind of guideline word. No hedges, or no plants that are situated in a way that creates a hedge.
A solid
A
visual
hedge
barrier.
like look or whatever, yeah,
I like that.
yeah,
Solid visual barrier
Yeah.
is a good way to put it.
yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Well
Because you
done.
could have pine trees all stacked right next to each other, and they're creating that same thing, but perhaps one in the corner is not horrible, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
would it be, this is where we say, the average height or something should be, or, but,
That's tricky, because to some degree, if your palm got tall enough, you can see under it.
okay.
Yeah,
But it does, I'm not necessarily.
I don't know. I'd be in favor of a planting should be maintained to a certain height. I don't know what that height is, but
I would suggest that it not be higher than 5 foot.
at least.
It's very reasonable. I think most everything that's out there is taller than 5 feet.
Yeah,
I know.
I
it's a
think
problem.
that's
Well,
pretty.
that's what we don't
Well, I
want.
think that's our disagreement is,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
you
another
see
thing.
it a problem, I see it as defining space.
I think another thing you see out there is that some of the planting in the native planters, the big bollards, the big.
The original
bowling balls,
Halprin.
They're like
planters.
7-8 feet.
Well,
some
that's
of those.
part of the design of the mall, though.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
it's.
That's a civic
They
element.
don't
I mean,
enclose the
like-
space.
Oh, so if government does it, it's okay, but if the private sector does it,
Well, the city did it.
but not, I don't,
I feel
Halprin
like
didn't design what's in those,
No, but
those
he designed those
planters.
planters and the
Right.
trees that were.
But he didn't say
created
that
the
he
space.
wanted them to be 10 feet high or contain,
No, but they don't, like I said, they don't enclose a space, and I think, to me, that's
Okay.
the fundamental difference. But believe me, Kate and I had a lot of conversation about those, because some of them were almost like 8 feet tall, some. I think this is where that idea of, and Breck, I'll probably need some language of that the materiality of the plants, the texture of the plants, the types of plants, that, it's not, you have some tall grasses or palms versus, a privet. But I hear you, and I don't hear support for a maximum height, but more of a prohibition of a continuous hedge.
Yeah, the visual barrier that we spoke of, I think that's the intent.
And the visual barrier in terms of pedestrian eyesight. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I keep going back to like the overriding goal of respecting the design intent of the mall and minimizing visual obstructions. It says within a cafe space, but really it's, the intent there is to to minimize the visual obstructions through the cafe space, right? Like, you almost want to be able to look past it and beyond it, things like that. And I feel like those are really coming up as the driving forces behind everything. So we have gotten to the end of the plants section.
although I want to comment, I'm going to
Sure.
express a
Yep.
minority opinion, and I know Jeff is going to cringe.
Fake plants.
Personally, fake plants don't bother me. I mean, I don't like them, and the ones that Jeff pointed out in the mall to me, you know, but I have seen in outdoor spaces, especially in the Southwest, beautiful silk flowers that you couldn't tell were real or, you know, and especially on trellises and decorative areas where you couldn't tell whether they were alive or not. They were so well done. And I'm not saying that the ones that are currently on the mall, there's, I think, only one that we're talking about. But I kind of think, what's the harm in it? I mean, unless they, you know, I wouldn't like them to fade and to look like whatever, but what public policy are we, I mean, how much are we dictating aesthetics where some of them could be quite decorative and low maintenance, and they could last longer than seasonal.
So
Flowers.
why don't we just put those in the same category as of all the other plastic stuff that has to come to us for BAR approval?
So the goal is
You guys
somebody.
just really like government regulation, don't you?
No.
Let's regulate plastic flowers.
Well, we're not-
Fake
this is a
plastic
private-
I think
trees.
we're saying
Yeah. It's our-
real live plants
Yeah.
bring value to the community.
Not-
And live is an important word because we saw a lot of pictures of dead plants out there too, and those should
Are we
get
gonna
removed.
regulate those too?
Those should get removed, yes, dead
Who's
plants.
gonna do all this?
Craig Fabio. But I agree, I mean, Sherry's right. My brother's mother-in-law had a business where she did, I mean, really amazing lifelike faux flowers. But I think that's,
I know that's not gonna happen in every
Yeah.
instance,
So-
I'll concede that.
so I
get it.
think that it would be, you know, at least not on the railings, it would be, but I understand, and I will do some homework on that and see. if
I mean,
we
I
can-
don't personally like it. I hate fake flowers. Let me just start by saying that. They've never been in my home. They'll never be in my garden. You know, like if somebody, I don't think people know not to give them to me. I am completely about that.
If we
But
go
in a
over
public-
time, it's your
But
fault.
in a public space, okay, I'm done. But we,
Actually, it's helpful.
but it was on here as a discussion
Yes,
point,
it
and I
was.
wanted to cover it. I knew I would get some blowback. That's okay.
You're welcome to your opinion.
So have we all agreed that somebody needs to get BAR approval if they want plastic plants in the mall? Is that where this has landed?
It makes it difficult.
I think it
I-
should be administrative disapproval.
I think the issue is that plants, for the large part, are not being used to beautify the space. They're being used to fortify a perimeter or to create a visual barrier. And I bet 75% of the plants on the mall are doing that. So allowing plastic plants off the bat allows somebody to create an instant barrier. I mean, we have a language in there.
Don't you have to run with natural plants too?
Well, but we're trying to not have that happen.
Okay, I'm happy to stand all here by myself.
No,
I'm really content with that. It's okay.
well, if I could help you all along. Umbrellas, cloth,
Well,
colors.
it's 2 minutes of, have we decided
Yeah,
about?
we were gonna stop at the
Yeah.
plants.
Have we
This
s-
is gonna
have
be
we-
kinda easy though, isn't it? Because
Have we
umbrellas
decided
and
about a
shade
study?
cloths, do we
study
really
that
wanna
we're
regulate them?
What's that? The what?
Do we really wanna get into the weeds of regulating umbrellas and shade cloths?
Well, we already do. So I'm saying that right now, our guidelines say you can only have one color, and I don't think that
Within
makes
a-
sense. So
Within one cafe space.
within one cafe space, unless you all
I
want to
like
go
that
back to that,
guideline.
maintain that.
I
Sorry.
think the guideline's fine.
I do too.
So the one color.
Yeah, I mean, I think where I'm seeing us maybe giving way a little bit is that currently the guideline says maximum of one dark or neutral solid color that is compatible with the furniture. You know, we're starting to see, and I don't know if, you know, we're starting to see some reds and some yellows and some blues. Like, I don't know, I mean, I guess you can have a dark red.
I'd be fine if it's just it's not just one color, but not
Right.
regulate which color.
Right. That's kind of where I'm thinking we go, is sort of, because that lets, it's for some vibrancy, it lets for a lot of diversity up and down the mall, but it's still, I think it is important to kind of maintain consistency within each cafe space. You
So
know.
we're talking, okay. never mind.
We currently allow one color. There are several spaces that have two.
Well, look, Monsoon Siam has every color, on the face of the earth out there. I know it's not it's not the mall, it's
Right.
not a cafe space, it's not owned by the city, I get it, but, it is a cafe space. I think it's subject to these design guidelines,
Well,
right?
that was an overriding question I wanted to ask.
This is
The-
not just a discussion on the
Well,
mall.
it's a question,
Okay.
because this section of the guidelines, the header says outdoor cafes. However, this original paragraph, and granted, this is sort of the dialed down version that was typed up, so we should look at the actual guideline document. But this opening paragraph does reference mall elements, et cetera, on the mall, et cetera. So it seems to be referencing the downtown mall, but I did have that question earlier,
Okay.
Ms. Lewis. That's a good point that we should clarify. It's like, because there might be a cafe somewhere else in a historic district across town
Yeah,
that then do
Well-
we need to apply these to?
Yeah, we've long discussed
what's that
having a
called now?
separate
That
mall
restaurant on the corner.
chapter.
Oh, I think it actually went out of business. It was Uma's.
Uma's.
So,
Like Uma's is a good example. It's not on the mall, but it's, anyway.
Right.
Monsoon, there are others.
I think-
absolutely.
I think
So-
that question about prohibiting within tree bosques is an interesting one. How the umbrellas affect the kind of unique nature of the bosques.
Yeah, that was a thought.
I
Sort
think-
of, if you're in the tree bosque, your cafe space is in the tree bosque, what do you really need an umbrella for? You're under the shade.
I still
Depend
say
on the
help
time
if-
of day.
I mean, if it does help if it's a light rain.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't put them out there if they didn't think they needed them. I mean, they're expensive.
I think they are the one thing that I think is really appropriate to bring some color and identify your space compared to others.
Do we want to back off the one color rule?
But I like the one color rule. They only have there's not that many within a single stand.
I have no problem with multiple colors.
Nor do I.
I also wonder, do we really want to retain the size of the umbrella should be in scale with the table? For instance, I would just use Citizen Burger that has the kind of, whatever one calls it, the larger ones that hang over.
They can't go outside of the space.
No, I'm not saying
There are
that.
some really big umbrellas that are out there now, like ones that cover 4 or 5 tables. Would that be
That's
allowed?
what I think is the one at Citizen Burger.
Which I don't. becomes a problem. I
Well,
think
that becomes a
But
permanent.
why is it a problem?
That becomes a permanent.
because
fixture.
it's a huge thing. It's a
They're
massive.
movable.
They do become,
If
I
they're-
know
there's
they're
a,
movable.
If they're over
I've-
5 tables.
I don't know
It's a
about
tent.
5 tables, but they're.
there, if
They're
you go
large.
to Bagby's, they have a really interesting umbrella. It's almost rectangular. It's on a single pole with a standard weight at the bottom. The ones that we're seeing, the cantilevered ones, have these almost a 4 foot by 4 foot, like you fill it with water.
Yeah.
Like a basketball,
Those aren't very
basketball
attractive.
backboard.
Right.
I think that's more a function of if somebody wants to take up space with those things, a decision, but they aren't removable, because one of the questions I was going to ask you all is when an umbrella, and I'm talking about, our typical umbrellas
I'm so
like that, when they're not open,
It's just me. I'm always.
should they
These
be
lights are so.
removed? So they're not, it's the Thursday, Friday, whatever business doesn't operate, should those umbrellas be and removed? They're only there during business hours,
Those seem reasonable.
or when they're opened. I don't know. It's something to think about. I know you want to cut, but that's an aesthetic issue of looking at that image right now in the center. You see a lot of closed umbrellas. Preference, I mean, if you have an umbrella, have it open, but that's a visual clutter there. So it looks like we won't
See, I
get
like
to
them
all these,
closed. It looks
but,
I don't mind it, yeah.
Yeah, I think it makes it look tidy, so I think this is,
oh, I know, but if the
Aesthetics.
business is closed, and I'd have to go look, I don't know how many, if any, you leave them up, but it's that appearance of when they're not in use, are they visual clutter or not? And that was a question, that's all.
okay. I thought you were expressing an opinion.
Well,
It was
just,
clutter.
it is, to me,
I mean, I think I think you put up down umbrellas when the space isn't being used for weather reasons. You never know when the wind will pick up or, I mean, just makes sense to me. I don't think that looks cluttery on the right. I think it looks tidy to have them lowered when the space is not being used.
I agree.
It also helps the pedestrian visibility to look through that space and not have it obstructed.
Contrary to that, I think what looks cluttery is the cantilevered umbrellas that have the big feet. That's just a lot of footprint, a lot of
I
material.
think Jeff's
for-
point is that weighted foot should be within the railing.
Within the railing.
And then,
Very clearly in our guidelines says, oversized umbrellas may be permitted, but all parts must be contained within the cafe space.
yeah. Like,
Seems pretty
Well,
clear.
I'm just saying that there are umbrellas that are available that are larger than that, that we could be, that could,
So,
yeah, we could be seeing.
they're like tents without
Yeah.
walls.
Reopening a can of worms.
I was surprised. I looked up, new and innovative umbrellas the other day. Breck's right, there's some, big stuff. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your patience. We're moving along. My goal is, most likely what I will do is take this and make some recommendations to you all, that we can either, you can be responsive to email and I
Do
can
we
make some
wanna-
edits,
but don't,
or we can have,
we didn't get through,
Right.
A
So
lot
we
of
had
this
talked,
stuff.
we mentioned, do we want to have a work session to
and we haven't talked about
get through this?
lighting.
Right, which, it'll take a while, maybe, maybe not. We could do it, I don't know what the rules are. We could
I'd have
potentially
to
do it
at
by
least
Zoom.
advertise, a week. So you could say doing something next Thursday and I would,
How about Tuesday, October 1st?
That works
2
for
weeks
me.
from tonight? Just throwing it out.
Let me see.
It works for me.
Works for me. Kate?
You don't want to say that.
Should work for me.
just got a cot in her,
Jerry?
I'd have to look at my schedule.
Has to check with his scheduling assistant.
Got to check with your shift supervisor.
The boss.
I mean, yeah, I'm gonna need to double check as well, but
Mr. Warner?
so far, pencil me in.
I'm absolutely fine with that, and, I probably could get the,
Roger? David? Are you
We
good?
wouldn't have to
He's
be on
looking.
channel
David's
10,
still looking.
it could just be in the NDS conference room.
And will we just start like at 5 or 5:30?
I'll put something out and see what y'all.
Yeah,
And
I
are we
think,
wanting pizza?
maybe,
I'm kidding.
or something different. I was thinking about sticks earlier.
I love sticks.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, it was,
They'll deliver
yeah,
too.
it was easy when we keep it simple, but when it was when
You do
meals
the
started
party
getting-
platter thing, the whole.
Right, that's what would happen.
Yeah.
The people that would order would,
It's
So,
really good.
I
You
think,
get better value.
thank you guys.
So
This
5:30
was-
on the 1st?
I think that's what we're shooting for. We'll
Okay.
nail it down with an email. In the NDS conference room.
possibly. But what you all could still in the interim do is
Right.
mark this thing up and share your thoughts.
Yeah. So, well, I was gonna encourage first of all, thanks to everybody for your thoughtful comments tonight. I think there's, this is a really good, opportunity for us to like voice our opinions, think about the needs of the community. Probably we're gonna need to be making compromises throughout this process, right? Just not amongst ourselves, but especially once the public and the cafe space renters are gonna make their views known too. So we're gonna need to be able to kind of work with everybody. So thank you all. I think if you haven't, take this, walk down the mall, thinking about these things. It's easy to walk down the mall and just kind of taking a stroll. But when you walk down it consciously thinking about these things, you see it in a different light. So I would encourage everybody to do that. And I think we'll see you hopefully October 1st.
And thanks for putting that package together, Jeff. That
Yeah.
helped
This
a
is-
lot.
And Kate,
Yes,
Kate and
thank you.
Jeff, this represents a lot of hard work, so thank you very much.
No, thank you. over-regulate it. I mean, we've been given the responsibility, I certainly have been given it to regulate it, and to be able to have some idea of what the boundaries are is very helpful to me. But, so sorry if we're, I don't want to upset anybody, but we do want to, you know,
We've got an opportunity
get an opportunity,
to,
right,
I don't know, do some good.
good
Yeah.
stuff.
Your motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.